The story begins with Tsurumi Asuta working in an ordinary restaurant named Tsurumi, which was his dad's restaurant. He was 17 years old and a 10th grade senior high school student. It all started 1 month ago when those urban construction sites thought of them as an obstacle and even got viciously slandered. Then his father encountered an unexpected accident. His father was hit by a truck. When he asked if they did that on purpose, his father laughed and tried to answer him jokingly. However, when they asked when he could go home, the doctor said that there was still a lot to examine, and he wasn't sure how long it would take. The situation was bad because he had a restaurant to run, and he wouldn't feel secure leaving it to a fool. Asuta heard their conversation and felt bad. His father was planning to cook even while sitting in a wheelchair. Suddenly, Asuta's phone started ringing and Reina informed him that the restaurant was on fire. When he told this to his father, the first thing that came out of his mouth was the knife. He started to bike to the restaurant. That knife was what his father valued over his life. He said that the Santoku knife was the only thing he could not afford to lose. Asuta also knew how valuable that knife was. However, when he arrived at the restaurant, it was burning so much that everything would be destroyed until they put it out. Reina came and held him. Suddenly he started to run towards the fire without listening to anyone's warnings. When he opened his eyes, he was holding the Santoku knife but wasn't in the restaurant. It seemed like this was the underworld. While he was mourning for his father, he heard a growling. He was in a forest and hearing some wild animal sounds, so he wasn't sure if he was in heaven or hell. He was scared and he needed to run. A big wild boar appeared out of the bushes and started to chase him. While he was running, he fell into a hole. He screamed for help, but the only response was the silence of the forest. He was annoyed and started calling the person who created this trap an idiot and heard a girl's voice calling him noisily. He felt lucky to find a person. He said that he fell down this hole made for mischief, and the girl said that she did this. She said that she made this trap to catch the gibber and asked if he knew how hard it was to make this. He apologized but didn't even know why he was at fault here. He still apologized for destroying her work and asked if she could help him out of there. She said that he should climb up by himself at his height. He was shocked and explained that he had hurt his ankle so he couldn't do it alone. But she didn't want to help him. He tried to convince her, and she eventually gave up and threw a rope into the hole, telling him to climb up. He thought she wanted to help him from the beginning and started to climb. He was not sure why hell was so real because he couldn't understand if he was dead or not. He successfully managed to climb back, and the moment he looked at the girl, he saw a sword in his throat and a grown woman asking him who he was. Asuta pointed at her rudeness, but she told him to stop talking nonsense and answer her question. Before that, Asuta wanted to know where he was because this didn't feel like hell at all. She said that they were in the foot of Mount Morha, a forest near the border. It belongs to the Western Kingdom Selva, ruled by Lord Xenos. She asked where he was from, and he said that he was born in Japan and asked if she knew about Chiba province. However, she wasn't. This place didn't have any resemblance to Japan in any way. Besides, there was a strange scent coming out of her body. It was like the sweetness of ripe fruit mixed with special herbal ingredients that help calm people's minds. And there was also a strong scent in the air like the smell of meat and grease, which made him feel hungry. His tummy started growling and he felt dizzy, but she thought he was making fun of her. He explained that it wasn't on purpose, and it was because of the scent of her body. She said that she didn't have any food on her, and thanks to him, she also had nothing to eat. He felt worse every second and tried to explain that he didn't mean to trespass on her hunting area and was going to leave, but his stomach didn't seem to let him do anything before he ate something. Also, the woman in front of him looked angry, which made him conclude that he was going to die. He then noticed that she was about to cry and asked if she wasn't feeling well. Her eyes started tearing up and she told him to stop talking. He was trying to say something, but even though he wanted to, his stomach just didn't stop growling. She then started to laugh so much. He realized that she was trying to hold back her laughter the whole time. She then stopped laughing and put her sword to his throat and said that she had never been this embarrassed in her entire life. So he had to die. Asuta started to panic and said that he was just hungry and didn't mean to offend her. He didn't even know where he was and why he was there. And he couldn't just die like that, but she didn't understand the thing he was saying. She asked if he was from Citadel, but he didn't even know a place like that. She said that there was something she wanted to ask and told him to follow her. Asuta wondered if she was okay bringing a stranger to her home, but she said that without a fire he would be dead when it gets darker. He then introduced himself a few times, but she seemed to have a hard time pronouncing his name, so he said that she could just call him Asuta. Her name was Maifa. She told him to hold on to her shoulder because he was wasting her time. When he did, she immediately started to run, so he had to hug her shoulder. But the moment he did that, she stopped and told him to grab, not hug. She noticed that the thing he was hiding in his chest was a knife. He said that he didn't plan to use it to harm anybody. Maifa said that if he was concerned about her, he could use it, but when he did, she guaranteed him that she would be faster and cut him to pieces. She also mentioned that they were wasting so much time, and they would be in danger if they get attacked by those Gibas when it was FARC like that. He thought she was talking about the wild boar that she set that trap for, and she confirmed him. He asked if her coat was also from Giba's skin, and she said that she was a Giba hunter, a commoner who lives in the forest. Their meat provides food, their trotters and skins are sold to make a living, and those who live in Citadel always look down on the people that live inside the forest and hunt for food. Giba's meat was very tough and smelly, so the people who eat its meat also possess that smell too. Asuta felt the need to state that she wasn't smelling bad at all, and he could feel a very pleasant smell coming from her. And he trusted his nose, so he was sure that Giba's meat must be very tasty to have a smell like that. When Maifa said she didn't care whether the food was good or bad, Asuta knew that was a hard thing to say. It felt like she was challenging all the cooks in the world. They arrived at the village, and Asuta immediately noticed the smell. He asked how many people were living in this village, and Maifa stated that the people here came from all regions, so there were 500 people in total. She mentioned that it would take half a day to walk to the end, that is if he was able to walk. A man saw them and called Asuta a pathetic-looking kid. His name was Digerson, and Maifa stated that it wasn't his concern. Digerson reminded her that his family was running this village. He said that his outfit was weird and asked where he came from. Maifa said that this had nothing to do with him and she had nothing related to his family, and she didn't want to talk to him, so she told him to get out of her sight. Before he responded, she said that if he wanted to fight, he should, and if he don't, he should stay out of her way and leave there while Dickerson was threatening her. Asuta didn't think it was a good idea to piss that guy off, but she didn't care. She said that after her father passed away, he snuck into her bed planning to disgrace her, so she beat him up and threw him into the river. After that, his family took her house in the village as a punishment for humiliating their heir. Hearing that, Asuta took back his words and said that he should have punched him in the face. She didn't want his family to chase them down. Asuta's stomach growled again, and she asked if he did that on purpose. She seemed like she was holding her laughter, so he told her to laugh if she wanted. She told him to shut up, and they continued their way. After a while, they arrived at Aifa's house. While taking off their shoes, Aifa said that she was going to prepare food because his stomach had been growling the whole time. Asuta was surprised that nobody else was living there. Aifa said that her father passed away and she lost her mother a long time ago. She then told him to shut up and sit down. When she took off her coat, the smell got stronger, which made his stomach growl once again. She told him to give her the thing he was hiding in his chest because it was a tradition of this place when there was a guest in her house. Asuta took off the knife and hesitated for a bit but decided to hand it over to her. However, he strictly stated that this knife meant everything to him and she should treat it carefully. She asked if the knife was a memento from his parents and he confirmed. After a second of silence, she said that no one in this forest doesn't care or respects their family. She then brought a pan. Seeing Asuta's confused face, Aifa explained that it was far from finished, but he explained that he was just interested in her cuisine as it used to be his job. When Asuta stated that this may need a bigger portion than usual, Aifa didn't understand what he meant. He was watching her cook and noticed that she was putting it in without any flavoring. It was an interesting way of cooking for sure, but it looked delicious, so he didn't say and just smiled. Aifa asked why he was smiling and he said that it just looked really good. However, she said that there was no such thing as good or bad food. This made him confused. She said that there was still plenty of time until the meat was fully cooked, so she told him to tell her his story. So he told her what he had been the past 17 years, where he lived, and how he lived his life. He said that he thought he was dead but then woke up like nothing happened, and even thought that he had flown to some unknown country on Earth. But that would be weird. He was also confused because he was able to communicate with a person who didn't even know what Japan was because he only could speak Japanese. Now it was his turn to ask questions and he asked what was this place. She said that the Back Forest Tribe and Xeno City were both territories of the Western Kingdom Selva, and there were so many people in this kingdom that she didn't even know the exact number. The people of Selva worship the Western god Selka, and the Amshorn continent has the 4 biggest kingdoms which represent 4 mighty gods. Everyone in Amshorn would receive the blessing and protection of the 4 gods, and the ones who aren't could only be beasts and monsters. She was surprised that he didn't even know about this. For a moment, Asuta hoped that he was just lost in a small tribe, then accidentally met a wild boar that hadn't been discovered by the Japanese scientists yet. Even though that chance was slim, it could still happen. But now that he heard what Aifa said, everything was clear. This wasn't his old world. He asked if anyone else died and appeared in this world, but Aifa had never heard of anything like that. But there was no doubt that he was transferred to a different world. He was tossed down here and everyone in this world could somehow speak Japanese. He realized that he couldn't see his father or Rina again, and couldn't give him the Sentoku knife ever again. Even if he returned to his world, that thing would happen again so he could no longer see the ones he loved anymore. There was also a possibility that he just hit his head somewhere and went crazy. Aifa said that the meat was nearly done now. When they looked at it, there was so much scum. Asuta was a little surprised that she was fine with his story. She said that it was enough for her because he could see the seriousness in his eyes, so he couldn't be lying. Or he was just crazy. Asuta thanked her and looked at his meal. She was surprised that he was so happy to be called crazy. He said that to meet a stranger and speak of such strange things, but she still chose to trust him, and that made him happy. Even if she told him that he was crazy, he was fine with it. She asked what he was planning to do now, and he said that he hadn't thought of anything yet. He thought about trying to find a way to get back to his old world, but he didn't even know how he got there. He said that if he was disturbing her, he would leave immediately. When he said he could make a camp, she said that if he had camped in the forest, a Giba would have come and eaten him alive. Besides, Diggerson saw him accompanying her, so if he, the one who doesn't even know the slightest thing about the four gods, violate any forbidden law, she would be the one responsible. He must stay in her sight for now, until he could at least know the basic rules to survive here. Then she didn't care if he went and died somewhere else. Asuta bowed and thanked him as that was how they thanked people in Japan, but Aifa was just confused as to why he kept bowing her. Even though he didn't know what she meant, he was thankful that the first person he met when he got there was Aifa. Asuta then looked at his meal and he was curious where all the scum went. While he was looking, Aifa asked why he wasn't eating. The meal was just meat, onions, and potatoes, and he wasn't sure if they would go well together, but he had hoped. However, when he tasted it, the taste was so bad. He remembered the time when he was with his father and he asked him to come and try cutting wild boar meat. He was nervous to do it but felt so good after cutting it. When the dinner was ready, he asked if that was the boar he cut, but his father explained to him that he had to marinate it for a couple of days to eat that meat. The meal was delicious and had no bad smell. His father said that there was also no fat, so the food was light and easy to eat. His sister was frustrated that she couldn't eat the meat he made, but he promised her to prepare deer meat for her later. He was sleeping and Aifa was trying to wake him up. She said that even though she let him sleep in her house didn't mean she had to cook meals for him. She then handed him dried Giba meat as breakfast. The meat stinks and it smells so bad. He was sure that the blood hadn't even sucked out entirely yet. But Aifa was annoyed. The dinner from yesterday was quite an experience. It was like he had been through hell. The meat stank, hence it was tough and full of fat. Onions felt like onions, but they did not have any taste. And the potato was all soggy that he felt like he was chewing raw flour. The only spice in that meal was black pepper. Aifa was now mad that he hadn't finished his dried meat. She said that before the afternoon they must pick some pico leaves and gather wood. He asked where was his santoku knife. He went to the storehouse to get the knife and when he entered he smelled strong spices. It was an ingredient storage and there were a lot of spices that he hadn't heard of. Aifa told him to hurry up and move quickly. She questioned the reason why he was looking at those ingredients because they weren't edible. Asuta said that he was the son of a chief. He wanted to say something to this girl who pays no attention to cooking. He thanked her for letting him stay there and asked if he could prepare the meals for her from now on. After a minute of silence, Aifa seemed confused because cooking was so simple that she didn't think he should do that as a thanks. But Asuta said that it wasn't like that and the food that he lived up to was completely different than what she had been eating. She was still confused because food was just a tool to survive for her. Asuta, with all his confidence, said that if she tried it his way, he could change her mind. With a curious look in her eyes, Aifa agreed to try it out. Since he had made a bold statement, he should have realized the consequences of behaving like a child, as Aifa said. Asuta asked what she meant by that, but she didn't answer. They went to the forest and started looking for pico leaves. She said that they could only be found on a neat riverbank, so those were different. Pico was the black pepper spice yesterday and she dried them up in the storage. She said that she could use them to preserve meat to keep it from spoiling for a whole month. He was about to grab some other leaves, but she told him to not touch them because stealing from Morga Mountain was a taboo. They were forbidden to harvest any kind of leaves that the Gibas didn't eat. Morga Mountain and its forest were all territories of the Western Kingdom of Selva. That means they, Morahen, were refugees from the Southern Kingdom. And according to the pact, they were only allowed to hunt Gibas. That's why they are also known as the Giba Easters. If they violated the rules, their bodies would be skinned, which scared the hell out of Asuta. They arrived at the riverbank, but there was no sight of any plants. She said that before harvesting the pico leaves, she had to bathe first and start stripping. She said that her body reeks of the stench from Giba's fat and told him to hold her clothes for her. When she gave him her clothes, she reminded him that looking at a naked unmarried woman was also taboo. Asuta only concluded that it would be fine to look at the naked married woman. Aifa ignored what he just said and told him to keep watch for her while she bathed and not peek. She kept saying no peeking, but her clothes were so heavy and that giant boulder was got in the way of the paradise in front of him. He suddenly heard Aifa scream and asked what was wrong with a worried voice. He was concerned about her, but she told him not to look. However, she was still not answering, so he had to look at her, but she wasn't in the river. He worried that she would get washed away, but a second later he saw her screaming his name. He thought she was drowning and immediately jumped into the river, but she told him not to go there. She was wrapped in a giant phyton. Since he was also in the river, the phyton reached to his arm. His arm hurt badly, but it was his chance. He said that he was going to pull it toward the riverbank and warned her to watch out for the impacts. He let it wrap his arm a bit more and it loosened up. He grabbed Aifa, but she didn't seem okay. He started to pull her out because she might have a bone fracture. The python was still in the river, but luckily they were out of the river now. He asked if she was okay and she barely said that she needed to drink a bit of water. Asuta realized that there was a naked woman in his arms with boobs and waist. He couldn't take his eyes off them. She suddenly stood up and went to her clothes. Asuta thought she was going to kill him or something, so he started to defend himself. Suddenly it got dark and he found himself on the floor and there was a heavy thing on his back. Aifa asked if he was alive and grabbed the Giba on his back. She said that it sneaked behind him and warned him to never let his guard down even if he had already defeated one enemy. With a serious face he said that she was right, but he was staring at her, so Aifa was annoyed. Normally his eyes would have been gouged out for looking at a maiden's naked body, but he saved her life, so she let it slip this time. He also thanked her for saving him. Now it was time to deal with this Giba. Aifa said that they have got to slaughter it first, but he asked about bleeding. She was obviously confused, so he explained that the stench of the meat was because of its blood, so it would be better if they bleed it first. She thought if they left it like that it would bleed out eventually. She was about to chop the Giba there, but he stopped her and asked if he could do it. She let him do it, but the problem was that the bleeding got too severe in the artery while its heart was still beating. After that, the blood would keep pouring. He started to cut it, and luckily, he made it. Aifa was still confused because he just needed to chop its back legs, fangs, and tusks to prepare it. He said that that would be a waste. If she did it that way, the meat would taste better, and that was what it means to be thankful for the life she stools. So after it stops bleeding, the internal organs need to be taken out. To avoid damaging the organs, they have to start from the small, then the large intestines, then the stomach, liver, lungs, and all the other organs, and done. He asked if they could bring all of those home, and she was okay with that. They tied the Giba, and she reminded him that carrying the Giba required 2 people. While carrying the Giba, Asuta asked if the skin could be used for many purposes like her coat. Aifa called him an idiot and explained that sewing was a woman's job, but they could trade for animal skins with Giba's fangs. He thought women would go Giba hunting as well, but she said that no woman would go hunting. This made him even more confused because she, a Giba hunter, was in front of him. She explained that before she was a woman, she was also the head of the Fa clan, so she had to learn to hunt from her father. She noticed that Asuta had been panting hard and asked if that was too much for him. He said that he wasn't as strong as a beast like her. Also, he was blushing because of her body, but he was going to keep it in his heart. They continued to walk like that while continuing to argue. In the end, they arrived home with no pico leaf or wood, and Aifa was sure that he was weaker than a woman. But he started to giggle and said that this was his stage from now on. She was confused, but Asuta stood up and decided to slaughter the Giba. In the next scene, the preparations have been made. It was time to skin and chop the Giba, which Asuta was excited, unlike Aifa, but he was sure she would be interested in it from now on. He skinned a piece of the Giba and then started lecturing Aifa about the importance of using a knife and pinching. While talking, he noticed that she was dozing off, but Aifa strictly refused. Asuta was also tired, but he needed to focus on his work because at this rate he would doze off too. But it was time to chop the meat and he couldn't waste even a tiny piece. He has to use every piece of it to prepare a good meal. And so, Asuta started his fight. He pierced the knife deep into its side. His stamina was reaching its limits, and he was getting drowsier by the second, and Aifa's clothing didn't help. He tried to focus on making the meal because everything was for his passion for cooking. After slicing it down its back, the preparations were finished, and he let himself on the floor. Aifa came and kicked his head, asking why he was sleeping. He denied that he was sleeping, but she saw her with her eyes. She said that she was going to sprinkle the meat because it would go bad very quickly and this was no time for sleeping, as if she wasn't the one who fell asleep. Before he cooked the onions and potatoes, he wanted to confirm if she had prepared the number of veggies that one must eat. She gave him the most horrifying look and asked if he thought he could eat only meat and keep his body healthy. He was surprised, and this made her even more curious. He explained that he had the same opinion as her. He didn't think he would get a normal reaction, but there could be that the concept of nutrition also exists in this world too. But now cooking that Giba meat that they caught was his priority. He took off his father's knife and started cutting that fatty meat with ease. He asked her if she had any other spices or ingredients at home. She said that she had some fruit wine and salt. Asuta said that she needed to cook the Giba with 3 arias and 2 potions, and it would be enough to prevent any illness. Salt was only necessary for making jerky for Aifa. She seemed like she was getting mad, but using salt to dry the meat was probably just to prevent it from rotting. She brought him the salt and fruit wine. The salt she brought was mineral salt. She said that a whole set of Giba's fangs could only be traded for this much salt, so he can't dare to waste any of it. He figured that this was the reason why she was mad and promised to not waste any. He wanted to try that wine too, but was shocked to see Aifa drinking the wine like water. She said that she was 17 already and it was her right weather to drink. Asuta realized that they weren't in Japan. Also, the age calculation might not be the same with his world. He realized that if she was 17, she would be the same age as him. She didn't seem to be surprised by this. He started to focus on those onion-like things called iras. He added about 156 salts to the boiling pot and then added the giba meat. The scum appeared and he skimmed all the scum. Otherwise, it would become the thing he ate yesterday. He said that it wasn't the time to raise the heat, but she was confused because giba meat had to be cooked for a long time, otherwise it was inedible. He knew that, but he wanted to leave it on low heat. There was so much fat. It was floating everywhere. After a while, he added everything, but the problem was the thing called poitan, which looked like a potato. But it didn't go well with the stew. When he stated how consistent she was about voicing her opinions, she said that he didn't know anything. 2 potions, 3 arias, and some pico leaves were added to the giba meat. By eating that much, you could gain a day's worth of energy, and that was the villagers' experience. Dry meat for breakfast and some kind of hot pot for dinner was good enough for those people, and it didn't seem any different than chankoi, which was a daily stew with meat and veggies for sumo wrestlers. Aifa was getting hungry and wanted to eat. He said that it was almost ready, and he was about to skim all the scum. Aifa was frustrated and asked why he must do that. He said that he must scum them a few times and then add the arias, which would take about an hour. Aifa was shocked. She realized that it was taking 2 or 3 times longer than her to cook that. But it was her fault for letting him cook without asking how he would do it. He didn't expect her to get this depressed, but she needed to wait to get a great meal. He cooked for a while and then added more pico leaves, and then the giba soup was finished. He apologized for making her wait and served her food. She asked why he didn't add any position because it looked weird. He told her to give it a try. They sat down and started to eat. Asuta seemed to like how it tasted and Aifa was speechless. Asuta tried the meat and he liked how it tasted too. The onion like Iris did went well with the soup too. Even though it was good, Asuta was worried. Aifa didn't even look at him once but was getting the second bowl. He eventually asked what she thought of the soup, but she didn't think there was a point in asking her opinion of meals. She said that cooking a meal for so long was meaningless for her because regardless of how it tasted, food was just something they needed to survive. However, she stated that it was clear that this was what delicious food tasted like. They say eating is supposed to make you happy, and when people eat delicious food, they think they have found happiness. As for Aifa, she thinks she could feel his passion for cooking. At least all his effort to cook this meal hadn't been a waste. She didn't know how to describe, but she agreed with him. She told him to not make that face and stated that his meal was delicious. Asuta was so emotional. He wanted to be acknowledged. He wanted his existence to be accepted. He felt happiness in his chest. For the next 4 days, the problem was he couldn't figure out what to do with Puritans. He harvested all the herbs and logs for burning, then asked Aifa for permission to try out the poitans. He promised to use 1 position per day. He tried to cook that thing in every possible way but always tasted bad. He was freaking out about it. Aifa came and told him to not be loud. Normally that is what he does while Aifa goes out hunting. She gave him his father's clothes and a dagger. She was lending it to him, but he wasn't sure if that was all right. She said that she didn't want to be laughed at when they passed by that river because if he wore white clothes like that, he would stand out, which was embarrassing. And without spare clothes, he would be naked when he waits for his clothes to dry. He thanked her. She then asked if he had found a way to cook the poitan, but unfortunately he hadn't. There was no progress and he knew it was an important crop, but he hadn't figured it out in the last 4 days. From now on, he was thinking about reducing the amount of poitan in his meals, but Afia said that this wasn't good. She said that they need 2 potions and 2 arias to eat with giba meat, otherwise they would get sick. She was completely healthy thanks to that food. That was the right number of calories that one needs to ingest and the 2 most important nutrients. The necessary number of amino acids, vitamins, and minerals were all connected. Asuta seemed to figure it out. If he assumes that Arias was a transcended version of onions, if they were the perfect onions, he was still missing nutrients. He hugged Aifa with happiness because thanks to her, he found the answer. First, Asuta believed that Aifa was saying carbohydrates were an essential nutrient. And when he tried eating poitan with the giba soup, it tasted like flour. Because of that, poitan might have been a grain with a potato-like shape. He still hasn't figured out if his guess was right, but to test this out, he decided to create a new dish with poitan. After getting punched for hugging Aifa without thinking, while waiting for her to come back from hunting, he decided to do it. If he boiled it, the bitterness would disappear and dissolve in the water. But if he did it that way, it would dissolve in water flour. If he could somehow transform it from dissolved in water flour to flour, then it would be good. He tried to use a little water to slowly dry it. It became some kind of paste and he took it off before it burned and then dried it under the sun. 1 hour later, it was completely hardened. He guessed that if he smashed that, it would just be flour. He smashed it and then lit the fire. If it was really flour, it should become stick. He wasn't sure if it would get sticky but decided to try it anyway. He wasn't sure if she would allow him, but when he asked, she seemed fine. However, he figured from the way she lay down that she was about to get angry. He mentioned that he tried on her father's shirt she lent him and asked about her opinion. She simply said that he looked horrible. He decided to continue his work. He noticed that nothing happened to the 5-day-old meat and was amazed by the pico spice. He started to chop the ingredients. He then raised the heat a bit and added some fruit wine while stir-frying the chopped arias. After mixing the stir-fried arias with the giba meat, he sprinkled it with mineral salt and pie spice. Next was the poyatan starch. He needed to pour it in to help everything stick together. He started kneading it, and since it was hard to adjust the heat, he decided to split it into smaller pieces. They had just the right amount of fat and a really nice pink color. He fried one side of the patties on a high head and then did the same with the other side. At the right moment, he added the chopped arias and fruit wine. He maintained the heat and then covered in steam. He was so focused on cooking that Aifa startled him with her existence. She was watching him quietly and he wondered if she was interested. He felt a strange pressure, but it was time to remove the patties. His hands were full, so he asked Aifa to hold them for him. While wondering how long she was planning to stand there, he gave her the last piece to hold. He then added some more arias in the gravy, fat, and fruit wine mixture and sprinkled on some salt and crushed pico. Then lastly, he mixed them. He told Aifa to bring the bowls as he was going to pour the sauce on. Aifa quietly did what he said to him, and now the giba hamburger or giba burger was finished. When it comes to poitans, he went outside and brought them. When he toasted the dissolved in water poitan, it became something like an okonomiyaki. When they sat to eat, Aifa was mumbling something. He said that the poitan was tasteless, so she should break off a piece and eat it with the meat. He was eager to find out if the giba meat makes a good hamburger. He tasted it, and it was actually amazing. The fat tasted a bit sweet, and the taste of the meat and the strong smell of the fruit wine along with the chewy texture was delicious. Toasted poitan was also the best choice for the meal. He was laughing at how he couldn't even digest the position. When she asked why he was laughing, he realized that he didn't pay any attention to her, and asked what she was thinking about the meal. He then noticed that she ate almost everything in her bowl in this short time. She chewed and swallowed her bite and then stated that it was delicious. He would be happy if she could give him a bit more impression than that, but she refused. He thought it was because of his unexpected hug and apologized to her, but she blushed and said that she didn't want to say it because she didn't want to. She told him to stop staring at her, which made him even more confused. A little girl appeared at the door and asked what they were eating. She came because of the amazing smell and asked what they were eating. Her name was Rimi Ruu, and Aifa told her to leave and not come near to her house anymore. Rimi Ruu scolded her for bullying her when they hadn't met for a long time and continued to ask what they were eating. She thought Aifa was married to Asuda and they started to argue. Asuda asked who was that kid and she said that she was the youngest daughter of the Ruu clan. Aifa said that she hates noisy kids like her and told her to go home. However, Rimi started crying. Aifa told her before that since the Sun clan hated her, it was best that people from the Ruu clan like her not come here. However, Rimi didn't care about that at all and sat right in the middle as if nothing happened. She said that the Sun clan was not scary at all as her father said, but Aifa said that it wasn't good for her to have an attitude like that. Asuda couldn't keep up with their conversation. Rimi called for Asuda and asked if he knew that there was a suspicious guy that just came to the FA clan and that was the reason why the Ruu clan forbade her from coming here until they knew what kind of guy he was. But he pointed out that she was sitting next to that guy right now. Rimi said that he was wearing Jirufa's clothes, so she didn't consider him as an outsider anymore. She was also sure that Asuta was Aifa's husband because he was wearing her family's clothes, but Aifa explained that he was just wandering around and she lent him some spare clothes. Asuta was thinking about just swallowing the rest of the food with sadness. Rimi noticed the food and asked what was it. He said that it was made from giba meat, and the other one was made from puritan. She wanted to eat it, so he let her give it a try. He was about to feed him but then wondered if that was forbidden, but Aifa said that it wasn't. It didn't matter anyway because he had already done many things that could get him arrested in Japan. Rimi tasted the meat and expressed her surprise just the way Asuta wanted, and this made him so happy. However, she really wanted to learn how he did this meal and started to beat him to tell him the recipe. Aifa reminded her that food was only meant to get them through the day and it was forbidden to say it otherwise. Rimi apologized and let him go. Aifa told Rimi to hurry home if she didn't have more business there. Rimi thanked him and then introduced herself, then asked his name. He also introduced himself, and then she said that the Ruu clan's Rimi Ruu would like to request help from the FA clan's Asuta. She asked him to lead his strength. He asked her to teach the Ruu clan how to cook the strange meal he just made to help the elder Jiba Ruu because if that went on, Jiba Ruu would die. In the next scene, Aifa asks Asuta if he really was planning to go to the Ruu clan. Asuta knew that Granny Jiba was someone dear to Remy and Aifa, so he was going. If he could save something with his own hands, he was going to save it. The previous day, Asuta and Remy were talking. He wasn't sure about Granny Jiba's situation but asked if he could come around when the food was ready. Aifa said that when the firekeeper from another clan cooks, it was their custom that they cook using the stove of that clan. Seemed like it also meant they could watch who's cooking actually. He made his decision and asked Remy if he could have her come pick them up as soon as she could. She was happy that he accepted to help and thanked him. When Remy left, Aifa seemed down. She said that Grandma Jiba was a precious person to her and she also wanted to help Remy, but even still, she wanted to refuse. He asked why she didn't refuse it. She said that 2 years ago, when a quarrel between her and Diga's son occurred, the head of the RUU clan, Dondaroo, proposed that she wed into the RUU main family. However, since she intended to spend her life as a hunter, she turned down the proposal. At that time, Dondaroo was smiling, saying that the Sun Clan wouldn't be able to meddle with her, and if they did, then he would destroy the Sun Clan. So that was the reason why she refused and ended her relationship with the RUU clan. Sun Clan and RUU clan had always had shaky relations, but putting that aside, the problem was that even in those woods, the RUU clan had a massive household. She didn't want to be involved with the RUU clan anymore. If Asuta gets involved with the RUU clan this time, he might end up getting dragged into the discord between the Sun Clan and the RUU clan. Asuta still didn't know about the customs of those woods, but he didn't want her to make that sad face. He just wanted to see his savior smiling, and that was his reason to go. Remy came and apologized for keeping him waiting. Asuta said that there was no need to be so stiff and she came early as she promised. The preparations were done and they headed. The building seemed different than Aifa's house. In the RUU clan right now there were 13 family members, but one of them was a baby, so he was going to be cooking for 12. He was actually told that he would need to use the cooking utensils of the RUU clan and wondered if that meant that there were enough utensils to cook for that many people at once. Riri confirmed her and then took his knife. He wasn't sure if it was okay to give that to others, but it was common sense to entrust them with your blade when entering another clan, including his cooking knife. Riri excitedly announced that she brought guests. They all started to come out, and Aifa mentioned that she hadn't met any other women from RUU clan other than Remy RU. Riri introduced the 3 women. Tiedemann RU was the former head's wife, and she was their grandma. Vina RU was the eldest daughter, and the second daughter, Reina RU. Hearing the name Reina wasn't good for Asuta, as he recalled a memory he did not want to remember. Reina RU asked if something was wrong, and he said that he just knew someone also named Reina. Since he seemed to have a sad expression, Reina asked if something was wrong. Asuta tried to laugh it out and denied it. Aifa introduced herself and Asuta. Asuta said that he had been asked by Remy RU and came to borrow the stove of the RUU clan. Tiedemann welcomed them and stated that the firekeeper for today, Remy and she herself as well as Reina, would be assisting him. Vina then asked him if he was born in a foreign country and if there was a circumstance for him to not announce his birthplace. He said that he was born in a country called Japan. He had never heard of that continent called Amsterhorn before. He knew it might be hard to understand the reason, but he stated that he was not born here. She was not expecting a foreigner to not know Amsterhorn and questioned why he would be in the middle of Amsterhorn. Before Asuta say anything, Remy came and offered to bring him to the stove. There were types of stoves that were for cooking meat or boiling. Asuta picked the one that was used for cooking meat, and Reina asked if he wasn't going to boil the meat because she heard that it would be soft meat, or she wondered if the meat he brought was different. Asuta complimented her, saying that she was pretty sharp, and she said that they could have supplied the meat, but she heard that he was going out of his way to bring it. Asuta noticed something a bit strange. He noticed that the Giba accessory she had hanging off her neck only had 3, and asked if she could trade for food with so few of them. Reina giggled and explained that it was a kind of charm bestowed onto the womenfolk as a kind of wish for good health. Being able to make that many accessories seemed a lot different than the FA clan, which needs to hunt once every 5 days. Remy brought the poitan, and Aifa was staring at Asuta, and she seemed angry. Grandma Tiedemann asked Aifa if she was the one who took down the Giba, and she confirmed her. It was hard for her to imagine a woman hunting a Giba themselves. Aifa said that her father taught her how to hunt, and she also knew how to live in the woods by herself. That was a lonely life, and Tiedemann asked if she was planning to die alone. Aifa wanted to object but couldn't say anything. The fact that Aifa was planning to die alone meant that the FA clan ended. Meanwhile, Remy was questioning the way Asuta was cooking. He wondered if Aifa was still in a mad mood, and when he turned to check on her, he saw her even angrier than ever. He wondered what she could have been talking with the grandma. He then asked Reina if the position was cooked down, and she confirmed him. But she was worried that if it was boiled any further, it would become like clay, and then Grandmother Jiba wouldn't be able to eat. Asuta realized that she was talking as if she had tried cooking it down before. and she said that she had tried lots of things to see if it would be easier for her to eat it, but she was scolded by her family not to waste food. Asuta decided to leave it to her and continued cooking. Now it was time to prepare the meat. Remy was surprised by the shape of the meat. Asuta said that this was the meat that was between the back and shoulders of the giba. Since they only eat giba hinds, it was unusual for them. Aifa also said that she only ate the hinds, and for such a large household he didn't think hinds would be enough. Tiedemann agreed and explained that the men fold of the Ruu clan hunt 2 heads of giba a day. After removing the hinds, they made sure it did not fall into the hands of the forest residents by throwing it into the gorge. There was a munt nest in the gorge, and the munt take the souls of the giba back into the forest. Asuta was surprised that they were throwing away that much. Tiedemann explained that if those without the strength to hunt the giba ate that meat, they would only be able to eat the giba that men threw away, and it would give birth to honorless people. He didn't expect them to be that strict, but didn't say anything. The next step in the cooking was to mince it. Remy found mincing fun and asked if he needed any more. Asuta said that was for something else and he needed to prepare the area next. He needed a lot more stuff, so he asked if she could take him to their food storage. He also asked for Aifa's help. He took them to the food trove and he was taken aback by the place. Reina offered him some of the ingredients to use, but since he didn't use them before, it would be a waste to test things out. They looked around with Aifa, and Asuta wondered what she was thinking about when Aifa saw that place. After gathering everything, it was time to go back. Aifa heard someone's voice and froze. Remy welcomed him, and it was his daddy Donda, the one who brought up marriage to Aifa. He seemed furious and asked if he was the outsider who stumbled into the FA clan and called him Pale Boy. Seeing the person Aifa feared, Asuta was a little intimidated. Donda was not pleased by welcoming the girl that disgraced the Ruu clan and seeing an outsider as their firekeeper. He questioned if Aifa was trying to smear their clan even more. Remy had enough and reminded him that she already explained that she invited those 2 to cook for Grandma Jiba, and he was okay with it yesterday. Asuta felt a little bit better after Remy's words. Donda said that they were giba eaters, and even she knew that if you can't eat giba, then you were done. Remy was about to object to her father once again, but a young boy appeared behind Donda and explained that just because Donda was lenient didn't mean he would give in on everything. Asuta added that they had no other intention in coming there but to cook dishes to save Jiba Ruu, and introduced himself as the FA clan's firekeeper. Donda told him to struggle all he likes and let him continue cooking. Asuta was making the last one and he told Reina to set out the rest of the meal. He acted cool in front of another clan's leader, but he was still scared to look at Aifa's face. Reina informed Asuta that she had finished setting the food and everyone was gathered in the dining hall. It was time to cast his fate to the wind. He looked at the people and then noticed the oldest one. She looked so shivered and frail. Before eating, they all made a gesture and prayed. Asuta was surprised that Aifa also made that gesture. He didn't hear it clearly at the time, but he guessed that she must have been thanking him. They may be a bit different than Asuta, but they were all still human. That's why, whatever kind of traditions they had, they certainly still want to save their own family. Reina offered the meal they made from giba meat to the Grandma Jiba. Grandma Jiba tasted the meal, but there was no sign that she liked it. Reina asked her what was wrong in a concerned voice. Donda said that this meal was just nastily mushed up meat and it wasn't even food. Suddenly Grandma Jiba moved and Donda assumed that Jiba was also furious. However, Grandma Jiba stood up and called Donda a child and said that he didn't change at all. They were all shocked that Jiba had stood up and spoken. She continued to criticize Donda. She said that assuming everyone also doesn't like someone just because he didn't was just like a child. She was still not fully recovered, so Reina suggested she slowly sit back down. She agreed to Reina and apologized for doing something unsuited for her age. She then called Asuta. He eagerly answered and she wanted to talk to him. She said that thanks to him she recalled about the past. From before they were forest people, the time they were people of the southern jungle. They were partaking of the fruit of the south and ate lizards happily until the war happened. The woods were set ablaze and they were forced to the forests of the west as the giba eaters. Without the mountain's boon, they were slaughtered one after another by the giba, and the giba they hunted was not fit for them to consume. Giba meat was tough and foul, and if they had to keep eating like that, they would be dead. She thanked Asuta for reminding her once again of the joys of eating. Asuta was humble and said that he did nothing but teach them how to prepare. That's why Grandma Jiba bestowed her blessing and gave him the charm on her neck. Asuta was preparing to refuse, but Aifa whispered to him to take it because it was a compensation for his actions this time. After Jiba, everyone gave their blessings to Asuta. Donda warned him not to get full of himself because for him, what he made was poison. Hearing this from the head of the clan, Asuta started freaking out because that would mean he would get a punishment. But Aifa told him to calm down because he was blessed by everyone and this cannot be ignored. While she was comforting him, Grandma Jiba called her and asked if she could come closer so she could have a look at her. When she saw her face, she stated how beautiful she was, just like her mother. Aifa felt bad for ignoring Grandma Jiba for so long, but Jiba said that it was fine and they had plenty of time to talk. The boy who was with Donda told them to spend the night. Asuta heard there was a free family cabin but did not know which one was, as they all looked the same. He was glad he came, and Aifa seemed a little bit more calm. Since there was no single one-size-fits-all in tastes and preferences, he could understand that not everyone gave their blessings. As an apprentice chef, it was a bit disgraceful, but what Donda Ryu meant by poison concerned him. Suddenly, Vina Ryu appeared and she startled him. She asked what he was doing there, and when he said he was doing nothing, she wanted to have a little private conversation with him. Asuta didn't think Vina Ryu was a bad person, but he was curious to know what she wanted to talk about with an outsider. She asked if he knew the ways of living in the outside world. Asuta seemed a little hesitant to talk, and he was a little bit scared too. Vina Ryu told him to not make that serious face and stated that this was a secret. She then said that when the time comes she would like him to remember her. Asuta didn't think she was talking about the world he was from. Aifa came and he asked if she was done talking with Grandma. She asked him why she was wandering in a place like that. He said that all those buildings looked similar, so he didn't know which one to enter. Aifa told him that if he was told to use a house without residents, he just needed to find a house that didn't have a light. Feeling like a moron, Asuta realized how simple it was, and then they went home. In the morning, Aifa was already ready to go home and hunt, while Asuta seemed like he was half dead. Aifa asked if he was sick. He was, but he said that he was fine. With a concerned face, Aifa told him to not push himself because he overworked himself this time, and she felt like she still needed to properly express her gratitude for this. Aifa was such an angel today, and it felt like Asuta was going to die. He told her that he was just sleep deprived. He couldn't help but get excited as if it was a sleepover. But since Aifa was acting normally like she always did, he calmed down. But after that, all he was thinking about was the word position Donda said about his meal. There were lots of questions in his head. The ingredients he used were the ones they normally used when cooking, so it can't be a problem of preference. If so, then there would be no way he would approve of the rest of the family members' views. So he tried to think that there was no point in worrying. He already got enough blessings and he wanted to believe that this was enough, but he was the son of a chef and the firekeeper of Aifa's clan. Moreover, he loved cooking. He knew that he couldn't make a dish that everyone would like, but still, being told its position was unacceptable. He thought about that for the whole night and didn't even know when he slept. Plus, he got nothing. Aifa told him to rest a bit while she went to discuss something with the Ruu family. However, when she left, Asuta knew he would get nothing while sitting there, so he went outside to get an idea. He heard the voices of men and wondered if they were going off hunting. He believed most of the men yesterday didn't give their blessing, so he thought about asking them. Since he was so in his thoughts, he didn't notice the boy and was startled. He was the guy named Rudo who gave a blessing. Rudo asked if he was looking for the other women. Asuta thought he might be willing to listen. Rudo said that all women went to bathe. He thought Asuta didn't know where it was, so he offered to lead him, but he tried to refuse. While Asuta was sure they were going to kill him, Rudo told him to hurry up and laughed at him for being shy. He eventually dragged him to the gate and then pushed him inside. However, Asuta was already feeling dizzy, so he let himself on the floor. Reina noticed Asuta and informed Aifa that something was wrong with him. Reina and Vina got close to him and asked if he was alright. Aifa came and checked his heartbeat while thrusting her boobs to his face, which made everything even more hard for him. It was softer than he imagined, but it felt like he was going to suffocate, so he tried to speak. Aifa noticed that he was awake and asked him if he was okay or if he knew who she was. Asuta stated that her getup was worse than usual and she kicked him. After wearing her clothes, Aifa apologized for kicking him. Asuta couldn't hide his shock from the reality brought before him. The parents had somewhat worked out that he was a male. Rudo thought he was a girl because it wasn't common for a man to be a firekeeper, and he kind of missed the point where he could ask about poison. Asuta asked Aifa what she would like for dinner tonight. Her cheeks got a little red and she said that she would like to eat a hamburger. That was all she wanted to eat. It was different from the usual Giba meat and it was soft and juicy. Asuta laughed and said that soft meat goes straight to her boobs. He then realized what happened earlier and it was a shame that he wasn't able to touch them directly. But like how he felt some known anxiety from the softness of Aifa's boobs, likewise the people here may see this experience of the texture of soft meat as unusual. Thanks to Aifa, he had figured it out. He said that there was one more thing he wanted to ask of her. He wanted her to let him have one more chance. He wanted to prepare his cuisine once more for that Donda Ruu who called his cooking position. This meant that he needed to borrow her power as a clan leader. Since he helped her last time, as a clan head, it was her duty to return the favor. She asked if he was certain that he would win, and Asuta confirmed her. They went to Donda, and Aifa said that she had a request. She said that she would like for the FA clan's firekeeper to prepare a meal for the Ruu clan once again. Donda didn't seem to take them seriously, so Asuta said that he wasn't joking and he was serious. Donda said that he was going to teach him what happens when he confuses courage with foolishness. Out of respect for his foolishness, he was going to prepare for the next stage in 3 days. In the next chapter, they were at Aifa's house, and she explained to him that he would be the firekeeper again in 3 days, and he would be serving at the Rutim clan's wedding reception. This time it wasn't just the Ruu clan, the Rutim clan would also be judging, so the circumstances would be even stricter. She informed him that it was going to be a banquet for the joining of the Ruu and Rutim clans. If he botched it up, the entire Ruu clan would turn on them and isolate the Fa clan completely. Aifa was pretty anxious about the reception. Even though Aifa was being caught up because of his acting out, she allowed his vendetta, so Asuta was dedicated to winning. Because of his dedication, Aifa seemed a little bit more relieved. While they were on their way to Ruu clan, Asuta had been thinking about the fact that they had been really cautious about poisoned ingredients, but until now, to them, the biggest difference between meals had been the degree of chewiness. With the ingredients he was bringing this time, he was hoping that he was going to pull it off this time. They were going to arrive at the Ruu clan any minute now. Aifa mentioned that Rimi Ruu had been talking with the women of the clan just like he wanted. Rimi Ruu welcomed them, and she informed him that she had gathered the women with time on their hands, and there were 4 women including Vina and Reina. Asuta thanked Rimi Ruu and the other ladies. However, he stated that what they could help him with this time was absolutely nothing. The women were too stunned to speak. Meanwhile, Dan, the head of the Rutim clan, was expressing his surprise about the fact that the Ruu clan was throwing a feast for the wedding reception. He noticed that something was wrong with Gazu and asked. He was looking at Aifa and Asuta at the door. Aifa stated that they were granted permission by the Ruu clan to assist and introduce themselves, saying that they were going to be participating in the upcoming banquet. Dan didn't care what clan they were, however. He warned them to not even dare to ruin his son's important feast. Gazu, his son, stated that they appreciate their offer to help out. He said that his father's words were extreme, but this was a celebratory banquet, so he wished for it to be something everyone could enjoy, and not just them. After they left there, all that was left was to prepare for the dinner party. He promised to get the preparations done in time. Aifa had high hopes for his cooking. Asuta went to the kitchen and took out the meats he brought. This time he brought 3 types of meat. Reina asked if he would use that for hamburgers, but was planning to make something different. He said that he was thinking of using them separately. While Reina was surprised, Vina seemed pretty interested. After making the meal, they arrived at the place where the banquet would be held. Asuta wondered how they managed to build this grand bonfire. Aifa informed him that the guests of honor were coming. Gazuran, Rutim, and Amamin. Asuta already saw Gazuran and he didn't look like his father at all. Aifa, with a scariest face, stated that he was looking at the bride a bit much. Before he could explain, Donda Ruu and Dan Rutim arrived and the feast started. The menu was grilled meat. Dan laughed and said that it certainly had to be of this grade for a wedding feast, but then realized that it looked different than usual. This was the filthy meat only meant for Munto, and he took that as an insult to his son. While he was asking who did this, Asuta stepped up and stated that he did it. Dan was not going to let him off that easily, but Asuta told him to eat some. He said that he could understand where his fury was coming from, but this was the dish he came up with after hearing Gazuran Rutim wanted something everyone could enjoy. Dan stated that if he found this to be anything like Munto food, he would pass judgment on this very ground. Aifa was praying. Unexpectedly, Dan eats 3 kinds of meat in an instant. While Asuta was shocked, his attitude changed completely and he wanted to eat more of those. He told him to hurry up. Donda thought he was joking. Dan suggested he try some himself. Asuta apologized to the ladies for helping him out, but more importantly, they saw Donda trying out his meal. Asuta held his breath. Donda noticed Asuta looking at him and asked the reason. Asuta noticed that he was eating without any complaints. Seeing Donda's scary face, Asuta apologized for bothering him while eating and was about to go. Donda stated that this time the meat for this meal was not poison. Donda was a hunter and he lived his life hunting Giba. It wasn't just for him, and he also had to hunt for other families who couldn't hunt for themselves. But for that sake, they had to maintain bodies with teeth so they could eat properly. If they keep eating the soft meat he made the other day, their teeth would become weak like the Gibas, and it would become poison to them. However, he thought that the food he cooked this time around could maintain their bodies like they have up until now. Asuta was about to say something, but Rimi Ruu kept insisting he listen to what she was saying, but he told her to hang on for a second. Asuta said that he just brought 3 different partitions of meat. The first one was breast meat, the second was meat from the lower back that was soft and easy to eat, and meat from above the shoulder that was a middle ground. He couldn't chew the dried meat the Fa clan had for breakfast, but for the hunters, the breast meat was close to what he was used to, and he thought that for Rimi Ruu and the others' taste, the shoulder and lower back would do the trick. Donda couldn't figure out why he would do such things, as food and meals were simply for providing the body what it needed. Asuta didn't need something to be his reason. As a chef, when this many people gather to eat together, He wanted to make sure everyone could enjoy it. Donda seemed to like him, and understood that he was getting the pride from making other people enjoy his food, so he gave his blessings for that meal. Asuta wanted to continue their conversation, but Rimuru had enough and pushed him. She asked if they were grilling the next meat or if it was okay for them to eat because she had been working so hard. Donda asked what she was talking about, so Asuta explained that he just brought the meat and made a proposal as to how to cook it. The actual firekeeper today was the women of the RUU clan. He thinks that the food today was something that the RUU clan made for dinner time. He believed that a meal that the whole family, despite the age and gender, could enjoy something really precious. Dan noticed Donda's dark face and told him to stop making that face. Asuta asked if there was any meat left, but unfortunately there wasn't. While sweating from fear, he informed Dan that there was no meat left, but it was okay for him, and he told Asuta to go join the feast. Dan had something to talk about with Donda. It was already become night, and Aifa and Asuta were enjoying their meal together. Asuta asked Aifa if she was angry at him for neglecting her today, but she wasn't. He asked if she was mad about the lack of hamburger, but she wasn't. She explained that he made her proud and she was so frustrated. Asuta was confused as hell. He asked why she would be frustrated when being proud was so normal. She said that she was the clan head and she was pulling his feet. He said that this time he was not able to do a single thing by himself. It was only because she allowed him in her clan that he was able to stand there now. They touched their hands under the stars, and their journey as the firekeeper and the clan head started. Meanwhile, Dan and his son were wondering what they were doing, but they were all looking forward to it. Aifa and Asuta returned to their cabins, and she asked what he would like for his service this time. He really wanted the fluffy blanket. Aifa understood the reason, but aside from it being the RUU clans, they didn't have the kind of assets to replace their mattresses. With a sad face, he had to say that he was joking. He thought about it seriously and he wanted some of the stuff from the RUU clan's food supply room. They were also about to run out of fruit wine, so it made sense to Aifa. Asuta asked if there was a way to buy it, and she said that she traded some Giba fangs for stuff from the RUU clan's food stock. However, to call it a present, Aifa said that they were going to the trade town tomorrow. Asuta was confused as she used the word town instead of village. As per Aifa's proposal yesterday, they decided to go to the town to buy groceries, which he was excited about. However, the roads weren't like what he expected. Despite that, walking a new road was refreshing, and being able to see the distant horizon somehow soothed him. Aifa told Asuta that they could see the town from where they were. The town was Genos, known as the Trade Town. There were groups of hooded people, and he noticed that his appearance wasn't weird when he compared it to the people around them. There were even street stalls. Suddenly he felt something weird, and he told Aifa that it felt very different compared to the forest as it was pretty crowded. Afia agreed and mentioned that even people from other countries use that place to trade. But he was feeling like people were avoiding them but didn't vocalize that when Aifa said that they were going to the trader. However, when they went to the trader, he also tried not to make eye contact with them and gave them what they needed. Asuta was shocked at how they were being so obvious. He was about to say something to Aifa about this, but she was unfazed, and said that they now could buy everything they needed. And then they bought what they came for and the ingredients for his reward. Since they got everything to cover their bases, Aifa asked him if there was anything he wanted. Asuta wanted to eat from that food stall before going home, and since it wouldn't be an extra wait for Aifa, she accepted. Asuta kindly asked the seller, and when he saw them, the seller was startled and called them the Giba Eaters. They bought 2 meat buns, but Asuta didn't seem to be happy about it. She asked if he found it weird to see Giba Eater eating Kimyusu meat. The people of the forest who hunt the dangerous Giba eat its meat and then ask for a reward for killing it. They call it hunting, but for people this unconnected and far away, they seem uncivilized, and the hunting they do protects this town, although it seems like these people don't think of it as much. She asked if he thought she was fond of those people, and Asuta couldn't give a positive answer, so she said that their emotions go both ways. Since they concluded that, she asked about the Kimyusu meat bun. Asuta liked it, but he said that the food he made was better. Suddenly, they heard a man's yelling, and it was the man he met in the forest, Tiga-sun, scolding a woman for bumping him accidentally. Aifa said to Asuta that she was still a novice and could only counter evil with evil. She borrowed a wood stick from a shopkeeper and told Asuta to hold the luggage for her. She called Tiga-sun and told him that he was being an eyesore. She told him to get the hell out of there if he didn't want his throat opened. Meanwhile, one of the hoodied men was watching her. The soldier showed up and asked what had happened. Tiga-sun immediately tried to make himself seem like a victim. The soldier wanted to hear what Aifa was going to say, but before she said something, the man with the hoodie stated that he saw it all from start to finish. First of all, that man was drunk and walked into that girl, and when he was about to kick her for not apologizing, that woman used the pole to stop him, as he said. The woman confirmed him, and the soldier told Tiga-sun to move along. Aifa didn't say anything and returned the pole to the shopkeeper. Asuta asked what she was going to do about the guy who gave his testimony, and she said that she was going to offer her gratitude. The man appeared and stated that he needed no gratitude. Since he had something urgent to attend, he thanked them for showing him something interesting, and left there. They continued their way home and Aifa noticed that Asuta was tired from everything that happened. She offered to hurry up with the dinner so they could relax for a while. In front of their house, newly married couple Gazuran and Amma were standing and they had a request for the leader of the FA clan. After Gazuran tasted Asuta's wedding reception dish, he was impressed with his cooking. So he came here to ask Asuta to become the firekeeper for their wedding banquet. The banquet was going to be attended by around 100 people, and he apologized for the sudden request and asked if they would accept it. This request meant that they acknowledged his cooking. He was really happy with his request, but wondered if they were sure because he had never cooked for 100 people. He asked if they could give him a few days because he needed to find out more information about the ingredients, dishes, and places to cook to fulfill his request. After stating that they would be waiting for his positive response, the couple left their house. Asuta didn't know how large the kitchen needed to be and what ingredients he should use, and he also needed some people to help him cook. While he was lost in his thoughts, Aifa stated that she was proud of him, but he didn't even hear her. She said that he did need to hold it all in alone and he could count on her more as his clan head. But she seemed so angry, so he hesitated to ask her anything. Asuta said that it was all because she was here. She accepted him, a person without any clear background, under her protection, and she was the reason he could go this far. Aifa admitted that his cooking had more value than he thought, and told him to have some confidence in himself. Asuta thanked her. They went inside, and since the banquet had around 100 people attending, it would be better if they had a variety of dishes. Good thing that they brought some ingredients from the market. He started asking about the use of the new ingredients they bought, but Aifa didn't even know how they were used. Aifa didn't have a sense of delicious taste, so she couldn't give him an answer. But Asuta remembered that when Remy Ruu first tasted a delicious meal, she thought it was delicious, which means. Reina Ruu also said it when they were in the food warehouse. The answer lies in the Ruu clan's settlement. Aifa also realized that with their current condition, they had no option other than relying on the Ruu clan's settlement, which was quite embarrassing. She said that she was going to ask for permission to visit the Ruu clan's settlement, and she asked him to come too. When they went there, Reina already knew from her father that he was going to be the firekeeper, and told them to not worry about using their settlement for the Rutum clan's wedding ceremony. He confirmed that they needed to make the dishes there, and then said that the Ruu clan had 4 furnaces. He wondered if they could make enough portions for 100 people at a time. For 100 people's portions, it would be giba, poitan, and arya soup. The 4th one would be used for grilled meat. If there were enough people, they could make just one dish to fill 100 people's portions, but since they were having a celebration, he had a different idea. He asked Reina about the ingredients she recommended when he was using their food storage. He wanted to ask some questions to the village's womenfolk. He went to the food storage and asked the women in there about how they used the ingredients and what kind of ingredients they were using. Aifa whispered to him that if he asked them how to use the ingredients, it would be meaningless for the Rutim couple to ask him to become firekeeper. Asuta said that he was going to think about what kind of dish to serve, and they didn't have much time, so they needed as much information as they could get. Because those ingredients were otherworld ingredients for him, he didn't know how to use them, and if they told them the reason, they would only get confused. Reina mentioned that he came at a good time as they were getting ready to cook. One of them stated that she often uses gigo as a vegetable even though she didn't know how to use it. Remy Rue said that Remy likes to use chachi, and if you cook it, it will become fluffy and delicious. Bina was using tino, which looked like a leaf, and after it was cooked it would become soft. Reina said that she also likes to use taraba. He felt like he bought this one in town. She explained that it could be used raw, but if cooked it would taste sweet, but also a little bit bitter. It sounded like tomato to Asuta. He apologized to Reina for guiding him to see the furnaces, but she didn't mind that. She said that they could buy vegetables at the market, but the only problem was the giba. Because they weren't hunters, they had to wait to acquire it. The sun was going down, but it was about time for the menfolk to get back, so Asuta decided to ask them directly. Aifa said that she could hunt too, but Asuta was sure she would need help. Asuta noticed that they looked different than usual and smelled iron. Aifa said that it was the smell of mixed beast and human blood. Among the menfolk, Rudo Ryu was injured and was covered in blood. They brought him inside and put him under a tree. Asuta was so worried and wanted to know what happened, but before he asked, Aifa held his shoulder. Shinru came and tried to talk to Rudo. Rudo stopped for a moment and he seemed like he remembered stuff. He started screaming that he was fine and asked about his father. Shinru explained that their father could not live as a hunter anymore. It seemed like he was still unconscious, but she heard his body was crushed by the giba's tackle. At this rate, their family was going to die and she was the only one left who could hunt in her family. She didn't think she alone could support her family of 5. Asuta asked if the hunt failed, and it seemed like it. Aifa was also a hunter and she hunted Giba alone all this time. Asuta always thought she was used to it, but now he was wondering how she was going it alone safely. When he was about to ask her how she was hunting, Shinru came and asked Aifa if she was still hunting alone. When Aifa confirmed her, she asked her to teach her how to sacrifice hunt. Aifa didn't seem to expect this request and she stated that she didn't know about that and told her to look after her injured ones. Shinru started yelling at her and didn't believe she didn't know about it. She begged for her to teach her. Asuta didn't exactly know what she was requesting, so he was just confused. Aifa said that it wasn't all the more the reason for her to not talk about this useless topic. Asuta was shocked at how blunt Aifa was acting. It was the same time when they first met. Aifa asked Asuta if they should give up on consulting about the wedding banquet. He didn't want to go back now because he was still curious about the sacrifice hunt thing. He then saw Rudo Ryu going somewhere and asked Aifa if she could wait while he was going after Rudo. He went and helped Rudo to walk while asking if he was okay. He said that he just hit his head a little and it was a light wound. He was trying to go to the river to wash it and asked Asuta if he could take me there. Asuta reminded him the last time he took him to the river and they had a laugh. After washing his head, he felt a bit better and he could go home alone now. Since Aifa wasn't there, Asuta asked Rudo if he knew about sacrifice hunting. Rudo wasn't expecting that question from him and asked what he was going to do with it. When Asuta said that it wasn't him, he asked if Shinru asked about it. He said that rather than him, his clan head Aifa would know more about it. A sacrifice hunt user always uses sweet smells to lure Giba, which was the sweet smell when he first met her. But it was Rudo's guess. Asuta asked him to tell him more. Aifa said that she stubbornly said she didn't know how to do a sacrifice hunt and had a blunt attitude towards Shinru. Since it was an old way to hunt, Rudo didn't know the details, but to hunt Giba at a stable rate, they purposefully put smells that Giba like on their bodies. Out of their own will, they become bait to lure and hunt them. It was indeed a dangerous way. Rudo mentioned that it was their pride as hunters to hunt, and they do that to protect their families. That was the reason why they didn't worry about hunters that do sacrifice hunting. They knew they also do this for their family, and that was their pride. Asuta recalled every time he noticed how important the family was for these people. He then had an idea, apologized to Rudo, and left there. At last, he understood what it meant to hunt. Aifa saw him running and asked if something happened. He thanked her for always keeping him in her mind all this time and said he was going to talk with the village's menfolk. He found the place where the menfolk gathered and opened the door. They told him to not barge in like that as they were treating the wounded there. He said that he knew he was asking this at the wrong time, but he asked them to hunt 30 heads of Giba for Gazuran Rutim's wedding banquet. Meanwhile, Shin-Ryu was with her father. The expression on her face was saying, "My family is wounded, what are you asking for?" And there was nothing wrong with that. But he felt like if he didn't say it, it would be too late. Shinru was about to go, but her father held her and said that hunting for others was the pride of a hunter. And even if he couldn't become a hunter anymore, she didn't need to throw away that pride. She smiled and promised to do her best to hunt Giv for the sake of Rutim's wedding banquet. The other men were a little worried, but it was decided. Donda promised Asuta that the Ruu clan's menfolk would hunt as many Giba as he needed. Asuta thanked them. He felt like he understood how these people treasure others. It must be for the sake of their family. He promised to make great food for the wedding banquet. A few days later, Asuta was shocked at how much meat they had bled and butchered. Ru's menfold hunted 30 heads of Giba like he asked, and they even remembered how to bleed and butcher it like he taught them. Some don't like the way to bleed and butcher, but the fact that Donda said they would do it to make a family happy was enough to clear up the problem. Next was to ask the womenfolk to prepare the vegetables. Rimi Ryu came and told Asuta that they bought the ingredients he asked for in the town. With that, he had enough ingredients for 100 people. Rimi Ryu asked what he was going to use the tarabas for because they had never used them. While he was explaining to her that he was thinking of using them for a new menu, Aifa noticed that the menfolk were making a commotion outside. The Sun Clan was there. Asuta remembered that one guy, and he told Aifa that it would be a problem if he came and made a ruckus. Aifa didn't know it either, so she decided to go outside and told him to stay there. Apparently, the Sun Clan brought a dead Giba as a gift for a seat at their banquet. Donda didn't seem to like the gift. He said that because it was so sudden, they didn't have a lot of time to prepare it. Donda didn't remember inviting the Sun Clan. He added saying that they needed to clean up their gift. They didn't have time for it, and his clan needed to do something about that disastrous situation. He calmly asked them to leave before he could no longer hold back his anger. Diga asked if that meant the Ruu clan was hostile to them now, and he said that they wanted to help him with the wedding preparations, but he was saying they were only disturbing them. The tension between them seemed to increase. Aifa was about to join them, but Asuta appeared and started walking toward them. He asked Diga if he was the one making a commotion at this place. Diga didn't take him seriously and asked who he was. Asuta furiously grabbed him and asked if he really didn't know what he had done and if he was the people of the forest. Diga told him to shut up and punched him. Because of that punch, the meat the menfolk prepared fell to the ground. Asuta once again came at him and told him to apologize to every RUU clan member, but he kicked him this time. Aifa called his name worried, and Donda held Asuta. He told him to go back and he was going to do the talking. Diga wanted him to apologize to him because of his rudeness. Donda said that he was the RUU clan's guest, and if he continued with this tedious talk, he would take it as a declaration of war from the Sun Clan to the RUU clan. Now he was scared. Diga decided to go back and take the giba they brought along. After they left, Asuta immediately looked at the meat on the floor and said that they could still lose it if they removed the dirty parts. Aifa was shocked at how he was behaving for the past minutes. Asuta turned to her and said that he was going to compensate for the lost part by changing the dish and that there was nothing to worry about. Donda approached Aifa and said that his firekeeper got some wounds. Aifa asked if he felt something weird when he caught him. Donda said that it felt like he twisted his leg or got a bruise on his wrist that made him tilt a little. He was going to check his condition later. Aifa blamed this on herself, but Donda said that if it wasn't him, she would talk to Diga's son, and the situation would have been worse. In the first place, she and the Sun Clan were not in a good relationship, so it was a good thing it didn't break out into a fight. He also mentioned that Asuta was not of the people of the forest, yet he understood what he needs to do in his role for the marriage, and someday, he was going to become a good firekeeper. Aifa apologized to Asuta for being late and asked if there was something she could do. He asked her to clean up around the area as the giba hair was scattered there. It was time to start cooking, but this time he was planning to make a new dish with everyone. They could make giba soup and poitan as usual, but this time they were going to put more fried food and reduce the grilled meat. And one last thing, he was going to make a new soup with taraba. The banquet preparations proceeded smoothly and the flower-decorated tower was built. With that, the wedding banquet had begun. Asuta finished making his new menu for the wedding. Aifa wondered if it was giba soup because of the red color of the soup. From the smell of it, Reina figured out that it was taraba. From what Reina told him, it seemed like taraba was a pumpkin-like tomato. Taking this into consideration, Asuta decided to mash it into puree and use the fruit's leftovers to make tomato soup. The wedding ceremony had become a lot more colorful with white poitan, brown giba meat, and red soup. They lined up the dishes and started giving them to people. Dan seemed to have a big appetite, so Asuta wished to have brought more and given it to him beforehand. Jiba Ru was so pleased by that smooth soup that she could eat comfortably. Aifa called Asuta and informed him that the ceremony was starting. When he turned to Aifa, he saw the bride and the groom walking and lit by the evening sun in the bonfire scene. He was amazed and felt so sacred. He suddenly felt bad for his father, but he was a little bit happy that he died. Aifa couldn't understand what he was talking about and pointed at the people who were about to pass them again as the ceremony ended. While the bride and the groom were walking, they saw Asuta and smiled at him politely. He hoped that the banquet would be good enough to satisfy everyone. Aifa informed him that the banquet was starting and told him to go. She said that she was going to change her clothes, which confused him, and he stared at her for a second. She told him to hurry up and go to the banquet with a red face. He didn't say anything further and started walking. He noticed that there wasn't any women around. Dan called him and told him to bring more grilled meat. He also thanked him for making this splendid banquet. Everyone seemed to enjoy their meal. Asuta didn't want to get all the credits and stated that it was thanks to everyone who helped him. Dan agreed with him and asked for 5 pieces of meat. When he got all the meat he wanted, someone passed by him and he noticed that it was Aifa. He was confused because she let her hair down. Aifa asked if there was a problem with her letting her hair down, but the real problem was her revealing clothes. She told him that the meat in his hands was getting cold, so he pulled it together and started walking. Aifa was always amazing, but her current attire was also amazing in a different way. When he brought the meat to Dan, he mentioned the women folks' attire, and Dan explained that it was the women's privilege to use those dresses only at the banquet. For the men, they were the flowers of the banquet. Flowers were for marriage and making a new family. He mentioned how important it was for the people of the forest. They would always be happy to participate in those events, and Dan hoped that Asuta would have some fun too. With that, the wedding banquet scene was finally over and the next day arrived. Aifa and Asuta were ready to go home since they had a nice sunny day. However, Asuta was barely standing up. Aifa asked if they should ask the RUU clan to stay one more day, but Asuta refused. He was just worried about the food in the house and it was about time they went shopping. That was the only aspect where she was so conscientious. He said that since they got proper payment from Gazura and Rutim, this time he was going to do his work as the FA clan's firekeeper. Aifa didn't object to him and they started walking. While walking, Aifa mentioned that if they were going to go shopping, that would mean they needed to pass that scary bridge. He totally forgot about that part. He noticed that there was someone there and it was obvious that he was so scared. The man looked at him and he felt like he had seen him before. Not a second later, the bridge cracked and the man started falling. Fortunately, he managed to hold onto the non-broken wood and the rope. Aifa and Asuta came to help him even though he told them not to. In the next scene, they are at their house, and Asuta is wondering what Aifa is going to do in that situation. They saved the man and brought him to their house. He was asking lots of questions about the house and seemed so excited. A few hours ago, they saved his life and he thanked them. Aifa asked what he was doing in a place like that, and he said that he came for a field trip to the edge of the forest. Asuta and Aifa seemed confused. Aifa didn't say anything further and suggested going home for today, and Asuta agreed. However, something was different. That man they saved was following them. Aifa noticed him and asked why he was following them. He said that they had some interest in the people of the forest who made a fuss in the town of Genos, which was Aifa and Asuta. Aifa seemed irritated and told him to not get in her field of vision. With that, he followed them, but he made sure not to get in her vision. He asked about the furnace, and Asuta said that they were using that for cooking. He asked what dishes he made, and he said that he mainly cooked giba meat as the base material. He seemed so surprised and wanted to try it out. Aifa seemed a little angry but told Asuta to give him some grilled meat to change his mind. The man finally introduced himself as an escort named Kamua Yoshu. Since Asuta didn't know what an escort was, he said that his job was to protect an important person on their journey. He didn't stop with the explanation, and continued talking about how he heard the people of the forest were people who fled from the southwest. But Asuta gave no interest in him and decided to prepare the dish. When the dish was finished, he was shocked and so happy to eat a good meal. He started eating, and after a few bites, he stopped eating. Aifa thought her expectation was true as he didn't continue eating the meat, but Kamua was so delighted by this meal and stated that it was his first time eating something so delicious. He even asked if her clan monopolized such delicious meat. Aifa stood up and Asuta thought he was getting angry. However, she said that he hadn't even tasted the greatness of giba meat. They both were shocked at how she said this sentence. She continued saying that it was a dish called hamburger. Kamua Yoshu got so excited and asked what kind of dish it was. Aifa told Asuta to show it to him, and Asuta started cooking while Yoshu was yapping about things. He said that on the way, since they were going to pass the encampment of the people of the forest, he came to take a look, but he fell. Aifa understood his reasons, but she had no intention of welcoming the people of stone. Yoshu understood her because he knew trust could not be built by words alone. Asuta interrupted them and stated that the hamburger was ready. He mentioned that he could only make small poitan and stir-fry as a side dish since he didn't have a lot of time. Yoshu asked so many questions that Aifa told him to just eat and understand. They prayed and Yoshu ate his first bite. He started chewing and suddenly stopped and looked above. Aifa asked Asuta what he had done, but he denied doing anything. The most unexpected thing happened and Yoshu started crying his eyes out. He said that it was so tender and had a great taste that he couldn't understand how this thing was a giba meat while sobbing. Even he, who knows a lot about food from the capital of stone, couldn't comprehend how he made such a great dish. Poitan was also so good that it was impossible to notice it was a poitan. After his breakdown, he noticed that Aifa and Asuta were sitting there confused, so he apologized for his excitement. He asked if the people of the forest eat this kind of food daily, and she responded that she didn't know if the others were eating and she couldn't say anything about the one that came up with these cooking methods, Asuta. Yoshu questioned Asuta's identity and noticed that he didn't look like the people of the forest. He whispered to Aifa, asking how should he explain their situation. She told him to tell him whatever he wanted. Asuta said that he was born and lived in Japan, and before he knew it, he had arrived at the forest's edge. Yoshu asked if he was an immigrant as he was a bit confused, and Aifa had to be involved, stating that no matter where he came from, it wouldn't change the flavor of the food. Yoshu agreed with her with a serious face. Aifa then decided to continue their dinner and told Asuta that there weren't enough hamburgers. After eating dinner, it was time for Yoshu to go, and he thanked them for taking care of him. He was glad to know more about the forest's edge. They said their goodbyes and he was going. Before he left, Yoshu asked Asuta if he would like to make a food stall in Shukuba town. In the next chapter, Asuta has dreams about that moment and he wakes up sweating in panic. Idad seemed annoyed that he kept dreaming and stuck a dried meat in his mouth. She guessed that he was just dreaming about crossing that bridge, but he said that he had a dream where Kamua Yoshu was chasing after him, which was scary even for Aifa. She asked if he was thinking about the stone capital and the proposal from Yoshu. Back in that day when Yoshu made his proposal and left, Asuta asked Aifa if it was too much of a joke for him to set up a shop in the stone capital, but Aifa surprisingly found it as a good idea. Asuta was shocked because the last time they were there, she told him that they were just a group of bastards. Aifa denied saying something like that, but she did hate the stone capital as far as he knew. Aifa explained that it was a little bit different than hating. She stated that they were obsessed. He asked if she meant the money, and she said that the other day they could only buy ingredients after they sold the jibe fangs. In their current situation, their only trading item was jibe fangs, but if he could sell giba meat as food, then they could make giba meat their trading item and could eat hamburgers. Asuta could see the personal greed she had, but she said that Giba meat would bring prosperity to the people of the forest. Without having to collect many Giba fangs, people can buy poitan and arias, and it would reduce the number of people dying from malnutrition. This matter seemed to become very serious, so he decided to go and ask some other people in the forest. Back in the present, Asuta asked the other people, and Korin Rutim also said the same thing and supported him. Even though the people in the stone capital despise them and call them Giba eaters, he was just surprised that everyone supported this business. Aisa asked if they should just go to the stone capital to see Yoshu. He told them that he was staying at an inn and they hoped he was able to cross that bridge. They arrived at the stone capital and Aifa suggested looking at the reactions of passers-by. There were a lot of people with different skin colors, but as expected, everyone was making annoyed faces. But he also noticed that some people do not mind him at all, and wondered if their attitudes differ based on their race. He tried to think that selling Giba meat shouldn't be a problem, but then decided not to take their attitude as a good response. When Aifa said she found it, Asuta thought she found the people of the forest stall, but she didn't seem to know what he was talking about. She said that she found the inn where Yoshu was staying. Asuta got nervous and wanted to go home, but Aifa of course didn't let him. She said that if he had gone home, their trip here would have been a waste, but he wanted to prepare himself. Aifa didn't care about that and said that if they went home, he was going to get frustrated over it again, and it was better to finish it now. When they went inside, a little kid greeted them and asked if he was Asuta. Asuta confirmed him and asked about him. The kid's name was Raid, and he was Kamua Yoshu's apprentice. Raid said that Yoshu was on the second floor and he asked them to come with him upstairs. He said that he would guide them to his room. As Asuta didn't even want to meet him, he suggested not to wake him up, but Raid was sure he had woken up. Raid yelled at Yoshu that the guest had come and opened his door just to see his half body on the table and the other half hanging there sleeping. Asuta thought he was dead, but Raid went and woke him up. Asuta didn't think he was going to wake up, but he surprisingly did. For a good 3 seconds though. Raid kept trying to wake him up, but since he didn't seem like waking up, Asuta suggested going home. Suddenly he heard his voice telling him to wait, and when he turned to him he saw him sitting straight and wanted to talk about business. Asuta was a little hesitant, so he started stating that the rent price was about the same as 10 pieces of Kimyu's meat buns, which was about 10 red copper coins, and as for him, he would take about 10% of his sales. He asked if he had eaten them before, and Asuta said he did. Yoshu also liked Kimyu's meat buns. In this trade down, Kimyu's meat buns were the most popular product, as he said. He thinks a Giba dish was good enough to compete with that and asked Asuta if he was still not convinced. Asuta was wondering if anyone would actually want to buy Giba meat. Yoshu guaranteed him that others would accept it. Asuta was still in doubt, but he remembered the moment when Yoshu cried after eating the Giba meat. Raid asked what was wrong, and he was too in his thoughts that he couldn't answer. He felt like he heard what Yoshu said before. Suddenly, he wanted to talk to someone from the people of the forest. Yoshu figured that the answer was still pending. They went to Dan and he asked what he wanted to discuss. Asuta said that he wanted to hear his opinion. Dan said that it was about time for dinner, and he thought Asuta came to ask him to taste a new grilled meat. Asuta definitely didn't come there with that purpose, but couldn't refuse him after seeing his exciting face. He eventually made the same grilled meat as before and served it to them, but was totally forgot why he had come there. Aifa pulled his shirt to remind him of the matter. Gazu asked if he was still worried about his discussion the other day, and he said that he also came to hear Dan Rutim's opinion this time. After telling him the situation, Dan stated that selling Giba met dishes in the trade town was the same as selling the fangs and the horns, so he didn't have to have the forest's blessing. But Asuta wondered if there were any people other than the people of the forest who would eat Giba's meat. Dan yelled at him for even thinking that people wouldn't find his meal delicious. Gazu suggested he talk about this within the FA clan, and since it was late, they had prepared a room for Asuta and Aifa. However, there was only one bed in their room. Since they were from the same clan, they thought it would be okay. Aifa thanked them for preparing that room despite their sudden visit. When the woman left, Aifa went and checked the carpet and it was so fluffy. She told him to hurry up and come in. Asuta was still wondering if they could ask for one more bed, but Aifa told him that this was not their house, so he should give it up. She insisted on him to hurry up and come, so Asuta couldn't refuse this anymore. As they lay down together, Asuta was so nervous because she was so close to him. Aifa asked if he already decided on opening a stall in the trade town. Asuta turned to her and said that she was wrong. In the first place, in their current situation, they didn't have enough cooking tools to open a shop. He also worried about the money and Aifa's permission. She said that she had already given him her permission from the start. She continued, saying that he wanted to hear from asking people was an excuse to not do it. In other words, deep down, he didn't want to have his shop. She told him that she had a request for him. She reached her hand to him and asked if he could let her do something to help him as a family. Asuta held her hand and glanced at her breasts and beautiful body. He was too nervous to speak. In the morning, Asuta woke up and he seemed a lot excited. When Aifa asked him about it, he stated that he had decided to open a street stall. They didn't wait any longer to go see Yoshu, so they started walking. But Aifa noticed that he wasn't going in the direction of the trade town. He said that he got disoriented and suggested going home first and deciding what to sell. They went home and Asuta asked what should he try making with jibe meat, and without a doubt, Aifa suggested a hamburger. Asuta tried to object a few times, but she was not backing up, so he started making it. This time he was making it a little smaller than usual, and Aifa wanted to eat. She was about to go bring a spoon, but he stopped her. He said that he was going to open a street stall so she couldn't afford to keep giving wooden plates and spoons to every single customer. He told her to grab it with her hands, but when she tried to do that, she immediately dropped it because it was so hot. Asuta wasn't surprised that it would be hot. He said that it was hard for her to eat the hamburger, but she got mad and ate the meat in one bite and burned her mouth. The meat juices were also coming out. He said that hamburgers wouldn't work. Aifa didn't object to this as she was already covered in sticky meat juice. The food he was going to sell should be as easy as Kim Yu's meat buns, so he tried to wrap it in poitan. He offered to Aifa and she seemed to have no problem eating it. However, she stated that even if it was nice that the juice didn't spill, the texture of the poitan was way too strong, and it would have been better to just eat the hamburger by itself and eat the leftover poitan afterward. Asuta thanked her. In other words, the sauce was insufficient and the texture was lacking. He felt like he could come up with more ideas with the ingredients they had now. He cooked a meal until it was dark outside and had Aifa taste it. From her expressions, it was so easy to understand that she loved this one. She said that he would be able to take down Yoshu in one blow. They went to Yoshu's inn the next day with the sample of what he was going to sell. Yoshu wished he would just hurry up and bring it out without worrying about formality, which made Asuta feel sick. Yoshu said that he was just joking and wanted to take a look. Asuta showed the box he brought and put it in front of him. When he opened the box, he was not even sure it was the same meat he had eaten before, because that jibe meat was red. Asuta explained that it was cooked with a sauce made from tarapa, and to improve the texture, he sandwiched it in between some tino and ria. Yoshu quickly tried the meat and he was once again amazed. He gave it to Raid, and when he took a bite, he said that the crispy feeling and tender meat were delicious with the sauce. After hearing what Aifa had to say after her tasting, he came up with this idea based on the hamburger. Yoshu asked what that food was called, and Asuta named it Giba Burger. He asked if he could rent a street stall with that, and Yoshu responded that the proprietor of Kim Yu's Tail Inn would lend him one. The next step was to decide how much to charge, but Yoshu left that to him. Whenever he wanted to open the shop, he just needed to give him a call and they would open it. All those people have told Asuta that his Giba Burger was delicious, but he was a bit worried about the Giba meat's popularity. When they went to their house, Aifa noticed that Asuta had something in his mind ever since they left the inn. Asuta explained that he was thinking about how much he should sell the jibe burgers for. He was thinking about selling them for 2 red copper coins, which was the same price as A. Kim Yu's meat bun. The ingredients he was using were aria, poitan, tino, tarapa, and poitan mixed with gigo. If he cooks 20 meals a day, then the unit price would be 0.65 red copper coins, and the location and the street stall rental fees for 10 days would be 20 copper coins. So if they set the price of ingredients at a maximum of 0.65 red copper coins, then by subtracting the ingredient price of 0.65 red copper coins, they could conclude that they would make a profit of 1.35 red copper coins. Aifa was overwhelmed by his calculation and asked him to say what he was trying to say. He said that according to his calculations, when selling Giba burgers, if they sell 60 burgers in 10 days, they wouldn't be in red. Aifa was relieved that he finally said it, but he was not done talking. He said that if they sold them at 2 red copper coins, they would need to sell 60 in 10 days. Aifa started to have a headache at this point. Asuta asked if she was alright and wondered if there was a problem with his number after all. Aifa said that it wasn't the issue. She said that she was the family head and she had a duty to fulfill. Therefore, he warned him to think and act for himself. Seeing Aifa wearing her coat, he asked where she was going and she said that she was hunting. Asuta totally forgot about the fact that she had to hunt for a living as she was helping him the whole time. He then realized that he wouldn't get her help from now on and that he would have to do everything by himself, such as material transportation, serving customers, and cooking. Aifa noticed that he was worried and asked what was wrong. He said that he forgot that she was a hunter. Aifa said that the Ruu clan had some members who were also interested in the street stall, so she suggested he go talk to them. When Aifa left, Vina Ruu came and apparently she heard the rumors about Asuta opening a store in the stone capsule. Vina Ruu seemed like a suitable person for marketing, and Asuta invited her to the inside. She was curious about what kind of things he was selling at his stall. He said that it was just one thing and he thought it would be better to show her. In the kitchen, he put all the ingredients and explained that he was going to mash the gigo and knead it into the poitan. Then they were going to bake the poitan. He also prepared the materials for the giba burger. He made the tarapa sauce, and after blanching the tarapa and peeling off the skin, he poured out the water and put a little fruit wine in the pot. He seasoned the tarapa with rock salt and herbs while it stewed. Once the tarapa became smooth, the tarapa sauce was finished. He then cooked the giba burgers in a slightly smallish size, just enough to fit in one hand, and then cut the aria and tino into strips, and spread them over the baked poitan they made earlier. Then he put the cooked giba burger on top of that. He poured the tarapa sauce on top. Lastly, he covered the top with another baked poitan, and the giba burger was complete. Vina Ruu seemed surprised, but when she tasted it, she seemed to like it. The poitan was a lot fluffier than usual, and the giba meat was also the perfect size. By adding grated gigo, the poitan became fluffy. Asuta felt good to listen to her impressions. They had all the ingredients plus the cooking utensils and the need to bring kindling to start the fires. He asked if they were going to be able to carry all of that stuff. Vina Ruu didn't seem to have a problem with that. Asuta totally forgot his standing position in that world. He was extremely feeble. Vina asked what was wrong, and he said that in 3 days, he planned to take everything to the stone capital and rent a street stall, and asked her to come again in the morning. In the evening, Aifa was done hunting and asked if he made good progress. Asuta said he did, but he still seemed a bit down. He forgot that this world was not Japan. He hasn't thought about things like thieves or unreasonable violence at all. But Aifa said that with her hunting and him running the street stall, there was nothing they couldn't do together. Asuta got the courage, and he was sure he would make it work as a member of the FA clan. 3 days later, Asuta prepared everything and waited for Vina Ruu to come. She eventually came, and she looked stunning. Asuta asked what was with her appearance, and she said that when the women of the forest go to the stone capital, they need to hide their skin as much as possible. Even though she was wearing a long dress, it was a little assertive to Asuta. She remembered something and mentioned that when she talked about Asuta's store, one more person wanted to come. We see that the person who came along with Vina Ruu was Rudoruu. He wanted to come here to guard him. Vina Ruu teased him by saying he came because he heard Asuta opening a store, but he denied it and stated that he had some free time and he came to help them. He also stated that if Asuta left on his own, he might get attacked. He was poor, so he would be targeted right away. He already knew that, and this was what he was scared of. He asked if he minded helping him carry everything, and Rudo accepted it. After packing everything, it was time to go to the stone capital. When they arrived at the capital, Asuta was on the floor barely walking. Now all they had to do was to borrow a stall from Kim Yusu's tail. Asuta seemed to like this new stall. Rudo was going to take this stall to the location and asked if something was wrong. Asuta said there was nothing wrong, but he was simply thinking about his past. He wanted to tell his father that he had his store even though it was small. He pulled it together and decided to start preparing to open the store. People seemed to be curious about their store and what they were going to sell. Asuta felt he was being looked at more and thought they were staring at him since it was rare to see someone like him opening a store. They brought the place they were assigned, and it was farthest away from the road from all of the stores. Asuta decided not to worry about that for now and started preparing. When he took a look at his stall, it looked a bit basic. That's where he needed to prove himself, so he told Rudo and Vina that they should start by preparing all the wood. He told Rudo to leave 5 or 6 behind, and Vina was preparing the arias. The preparations were done after bringing the pot and laying aside the Gibaberg materials. Asuta thanked Vina and Rudo for their help. He was excited to have his store even though it was not only his. If everyone in the forest and Aifa weren't here, he wouldn't have made it. The problem was no one had come here. Asuta wondered if they could have someone advertise the store outside where people could see, but it was banned. Asuta saw someone passing by their stall, so he told Vina to put the aria on the poitan and looked at the man with a smile on his face, but the man ignored him and continued his way. However, he did a U-turn right there in front of the stall. Vina tried to cheer him up, saying that the store just opened. He wondered where all the people who were watching them pull their store went. He looked at Rudo, and even he seemed bored, and at this rate Asuta wasn't sure if he could reach his goal of 10. He wanted to avoid failing at all costs, so he told Vina to give him the materials for the Gibaberg. The moment he started cooking, the smell of the Gibaberg reached the people and they came by the smell. However, after seeing that he was cooking the Giba meat, they decided not to buy it and left there. Asuta was shocked, and he thought about the possibility of Giba meat being accepted by only the forest people. However, just as he was thinking about giving up, a man with a hoodie came and wanted to buy one. Asuta saw them earlier and they were always in a group wearing suspicious coats. He cooked one and gave it to the man, but he didn't eat it at first. After telling him to eat, the man took a bite and Asuta anxiously waited for his reaction. Those guys were not from Xeno City and they weren't anyone he knew. Nevertheless, they were his first customer. The man ate the Gibaberg without saying anything. After finishing it, he whispered to the man next to him and then they nodded to each other. Asuta was trying to figure out what their reaction was, and the man looked him in the eye and asked for 7 more Gibaberg. Asuta was confused, so Vina explained that he wanted to buy 7 more. That conversation just now was a judgment for the burger. After making their burgers, they paid 14 red copper coins and then left. They managed to sell 8 to their first customer. Asuta was happy that they managed to do that, but he still had no idea what they thought about his burger. But out of their goal of 10 sales, they already sold 8. He decided to sell all 10 today. However, during the day, no one was coming. Not even a single person. They only needed 2 more burgers to reach their goals, but it seemed so hard to do that in this condition. Asuta noticed that Raid, Kamyua's apprentice, was there. Asuta was surprised because it was really rare to see him without Kamyua. Raid said that he was really busy and couldn't stop working right now, so he had to come here himself. Asuta asked about the reason he came here, and he said that it was something disappointing. Kamyua was crying and begging for Asuta's burger and conditioned him that he couldn't work without eating Giba burger. He asked if he could sell him one. Asuta immediately accepted. When Rain said he would like to have one too, Asuta was on the moon from happiness. Just like that, the 10-day store that survived the first day ended safely. Asuta thanked Vina and Rudo for helping, and when they left, he went inside. Aifa was sitting there waiting for him. She said that he came quickly, but it was just past noon, so it wasn't that quick. She asked if he managed to sell 10 burgers, and he said he did. But if they didn't have Kamyua help them, they wouldn't have reached their quota of selling 10. Asuta asked about the guys that wear the white cloaks. Aifa explained that they were probably the northern Shimu people that came to see the stores. She asked if something happened with the Shimu people, and Asuta replied that they had come and bought his Giba burgers. Aifa found this pretty interesting. She can't say that the Shimu people hate Giba meat, but it would be their first time eating that, which would mean as a person of the forest, they had changed how some people see this food. Asuta was so happy that he thanked Aifa for saying that. Without waiting any further, Asuta decided to prepare the dinner. The next day, the incident started. It was raining so hard at the stone capital. Asuta was worried that the Shimu people wouldn't come if there was this much rain. Kamyua came to surprise him. He wanted to take 3 burgers, 2 for himself and 1 for Raid. He made 3 burgers and got 6 red copper coins. Before Kamyua left, he stated how much he disliked this much rain, and Asuta agreed. Meanwhile, the incident happened. Aifa was lying motionless on the floor. The rain wasn't stopping and they couldn't even see any more people around at all. He decided to close the store for today. Vina asked if that would be okay as they only sold 3 today, but as Asuta said, even though they work here as long as they wanted, they should also decide when it was a good time to head home. He apologized to Rudo for having him carry it all back, but he didn't care how much he had to carry. The problem was, he didn't want to go through the wet mountain path with him as it was dangerous. They eventually had to head home while Rudo was giving warnings to Asuta every minute. They were going in a specific order, but Rudo was still worried something would happen, and kept warning him about what would happen if he slipped. He promised to do his best and started walking very carefully. They were pretty close to home and he was following the holes which his feet fitted perfectly in. He noticed something and called Rudo. He said that someone might have fallen here and asked what to do. Rudo decided to go have a look and told them to not move. When Rudo saw the person who fell, he called for Asuta, telling him to drop everything and come down there. It was Aifa. It looked like she passed out. Asuta immediately grabbed her and started moving, but Rudo suggested waiting and calling for help from the other houses around here, but there was no way Asuta could leave her like that. He told Rudo that he wanted to take his family home and wanted his help. Rudo came to help him and they started carrying her. With Vina's help, they managed to bring her home safely. Asuta apologized and thanked them for helping him. After they left, Asuta lit the fire, dried her clothes, and made a bed for her. When he was done with everything, Aifa woke up. The first thing she asked was why she was back at home. Asuta explained that she passed out in the forest getting drenched and asked if her body hurt anywhere. Asuta noticed that she was throbbing, so he told her to lie down. Aifa could barely state that her body felt heavy. Asuta was heating the soup for her. She said that her right shoulder was dislocated. Asuta brought the soup and asked if she could drink some, but she didn't respond. He asked what was wrong and she asked if he could feed her. Even though he got nervous, he started to feed her. He tried to focus on feeding her instead of thinking about how cute she was. After drinking the soup, Aifa asked if he could rub some ointment on her right shoulder. He couldn't respond well because of his surprise, so she wanted to get the ointment herself, but he didn't let her do that and brought it. While he was rubbing on her shoulder, Aifa had a hard time standing still. He asked if she had a fever because something was wrong. She decided to go to sleep and grabbed Asuta and they ended up lying down together. Asuta couldn't stop thinking about how close they were until she chanted for his father. He realized that Aifa was 17 years old just like him, and she lived by herself all this time. He turned to her and told her that he would always be by her side. In the next scene, Aifa was going to work with Asuta, but she wasn't sure it would be okay for her to go. Asuta said that her fever had gone down and she couldn't hunt for a while with that shoulder, so she was going to go to Genos with him as a guard. When Vinaru and Rudoru arrived at Asuta's, they were surprised to see Aifa. They asked her if she was okay to be moving around as her arm was injured. To their surprise, Aifa apologized for being a bother to them yesterday and thanked them for carrying her. As she was unable to hunt, she asked to escort them to Genos. Asuta realized that she was bothered by it as she was saying that she could protect them even with her arm like that. Rudo responded that he would carry their luggage to the town, and then they could sample the food too. Vina added that they already got a separate payment from Asuta, so there was nothing to worry about. When they arrived at the store, Asuta asked Vina-Ru for help because some materials in the rain were left behind. He couldn't make any Giba burgers yesterday, so he decided to mince the meat and asked her to knead it. Rudo and Aifa were watching them, and Rudo said that he should rest a little as not many people come anyway. Aifa was surprised. He said that there weren't many people who came down this small alley, and the only people that came here had a reason. But a customer would smell food. A man came to the stall and started scolding Asuta for not having customers. It was the man from the vegetable shop. He said that he only sold this store to him because Kamua Yoshu said he should, and he used all the vegetables from him. Aifa started walking towards the man and asked him if he had ever eaten a hamburger before, and that he shouldn't say anything before trying it. Asuta was speechless. The man called Aifa and surprisingly thanked her for saving his daughter. Aifa asked what on earth he was talking about, and he showed his daughter Tara. But even seeing her didn't help Aifa to remember. Tara said that she got mixed up in a situation with a drunk man and she made him go away. A person who drinks alcohol from Genos would be someone from Sun's house. So Aifa remembered what happened. Tara's father seemed to be curious about that Hamburg she was talking about and wanted 2 of them. One for him and one for his daughter. Asuta asked if that would be okay, and the man simply stated that he wanted to test how his vegetables were being used. With that, Asuta asked Vina to put some tino on top of the poiton. The man was confused by what he was cooking because he wouldn't taste how good the tino was if he sliced it thinly. He was even more confused to see Giba meat looking nothing like Giba's. After putting the mat on top of the tino, the burgers were ready to be eaten. His daughter Tara didn't wait any longer and tasted the burger. He expected her to say it was too spicy, but to his surprise, she stated that this burger was really yummy. He didn't want to wait any longer and ate the burger in a second. He couldn't believe what he ate was actually Giba meat. The thinly sliced tino was great and the softness absorbed all the flavor. He then asked if anything would change if he used any other meat. He was only selling Giba meat for the time being after all. However, Asuta stated that the Giba burger wasn't bad, and he also wanted more people to know how good Giba meat was. He said to himself that he would make it with just the Giba burger, but now the situation wasn't that good. But he couldn't say that out loud in front of Aifa. Tara's father then decided to do something about it and introduce him to more vegetables that would go well with the Giba. He looked at his daughter and seemed a little sad that she wasn't paying attention. He decided to go get the vegetables with Tara. He came back with so many different vegetables that even Aifa had never seen before. He asked if he could taste some of them, and the man was okay as they didn't sell much. He warned him that there were a few vegetables with a strong flavor. The first vegetable he tried on seemed to be one of them. The vegetable was called mayamu, and the man explained that its smell was strong and it wasn't something you would eat raw. Asuta was still sitting on the ground with mayamu in his mouth. He told Asuta to spit out if he wanted, but he refused and swallowed it. Asuta said that he might be able to do something with this vegetable. The vegetable guy asked how many mayamus he would like to buy. They talked about the price and the amount, and the business talk was concluded, and he left to get the vegetables. Asuta was thinking about what to do with the leftover ingredients when Aifa commented that the vegetable shop owner was pretty skillful. Asuta was a cook, so he decided to create a new menu from the hint he gave him as a vegetable pro. Vina-Ru came and asked what he was doing, and he responded that he was thinking about the ingredients for the new menu. Vina-Ru was shocked when she heard him. She asked if he was planning to make a new dish just by improvising. When he confirmed her, she wanted to join him. First things first, they look for ingredients. If they were cooking meat, they would need fruit wine for the aroma. Vina asked what he was going to do about the flavor, and he said that the rock salt was used in the sauce for the Giba burg and pico leaves, but he realized that it was pretty much the same as the grilled Giba meat. But to have them eat the meat, they would need a slightly different idea. Vina was surprised to see Asuta slicing the meat so thin. He explained that it was easier to eat it when it was thin, and the salt and the pico leaves had a stronger flavor. The vegetable man returned, and apparently his name was Dora. Dora brought the mayamu he ordered, and Asuta thinly sliced the mayamu. He asked Vina to light the furnace. He poured the fruit wine and put in the sliced mayamu. Let it cook for a while, then pour in some more fruit wine. The smell of the food started coming out, making Dora and Aifa pleased. Lastly, Asuta put the Giba meat he thinly sliced up earlier on top. This smell was something that made them hungry. The smell of the cooking Giba meat and the smell of the mayamu on top of that was spreading all throughout the town. Aifa was once again amazed by Asuta's cooking skills. Asuta asked Vina-Ru if she could prepare the cooked poiton and tino leaves, and she immediately did it. With the poiton and tino leaves, it should be a dish that you could walk and eat at the same time. With the cooked giba meat, they put it on top of the poitan and put some of the sauce on top, and the dish was ready. As the insides may fall out, he wrapped the poitan, and the giba meat dish was completed. As Dora was the one who sold him the mayamu, he wanted to be his first customer. Asuta wasn't sure about this because it was a trial product, but Dora still wanted to pay him and have a taste. He eventually handed him the giba wrap and he started eating right away. While he was describing how good the food was, the Shimu people appeared behind him. Asuta thought they came to eat the jibe burgers, but they pointed at the food he just cooked. They wanted one cooked mayamu, and Asuta immediately started preparing. Dora left after saying that he was going to pop over here later to buy some for Tara. The mayamu was ready and he started eating in silence again. Just like the other time, they started whispering again. He then turned to Asuta, asking for 6 mayamu and 7 giba burgers. With Dora's purchase earlier and this, the losses they made yesterday were now gone. Asuta smiled politely and stated that he was going to prepare them now. Aifa and Ruto were watching them quietly. After a while, their order was ready and they took everything and left. Asuta was so relieved that all the giba meat was sold. All that was left were the ones for Dora's daughter Tara, but he wondered when he would come back. Ruto offered to go check on Dora because Aifa was already here and it was hard for him to keep guarding with that delicious smell. He headed to the vegetable store with an upset face, but Asuta called him and promised to make a burger for him. Hearing this, Ruto's sad face disappeared and he smiled at him. Aifa apologized for being a trouble to him, but Asuta stated that he was the one who was being helped there. And selling giba meat like this was something he wouldn't have been able to do on his own. He was thankful to everyone who lived in the forest and everyone who lived in Genos. Vina said that she was thankful to Asuta too, but he seemed confused. She decided to start cutting up the tino leaves, and Asuta gave his attention to cooking again. While Ruto was walking, he saw a bunch of people keeping an eye on Asuta's store. "It's that store," they said and started moving. Ruto decided to follow them. Meanwhile, Asuta and Vina finished cooking the giba burger. All that was left was the mayamu. Those people were watching them from a distance, and the woman in front of them was glaring at them. Ruto was worried that they were going to do something bad to Asuta's store. The woman stated that she smelled something good and came over here, and people from the forest have opened a store. This would mean it was giba meat, so the men behind her decided to go to the vegetable shop and stated that they came to see what it was. They started blaming the woman named Yumi and she seemed confused. Asuta was watching them in silence. They forced Yumi to test it out. She said that giba meat was gross, but they said that she was the one who wanted to come over here. Asuta was confused. He knew that the forest people didn't have the best reputation, but he didn't expect it to be this much. He calmly asked if she would like to try one of their products before complaining about them just based on looks. He knew what he was doing wasn't good, but he didn't open his store for people to get annoyed. The woman agreed to taste some of his cooked meal. After hearing that, he decided to cook her mayamu with jibe meat. The guys behind her were stating that she was so unlucky. Asuta prepared the meat and she bought it for 2 red copper coins. She came here because of the good smell, so Asuta was almost sure she would like it. When she had a bite, Asuta was pretty comfortable. The guys asked how it was, and Yumi suddenly turned her back to them. They asked what was wrong, and she said that she wanted to get away from this place and asked them if they wanted to eat it. Asuta was stunned. They all left after seeing Yumi so angry. Asuta didn't say anything further and continued cooking. Ruto came back with Dora. Asuta said that his cooked mayamu was ready. Dora noticed that he was a little hesitant when saying cooked mayamu. Asuta first seemed a little down, but then confidently stated that he was excited about how he was going to cook this. Seeing his expression, Aifa couldn't help but smile a little. Dora was surprised that he was planning to improve this cooked mayamu further because he thought it was plenty good. Asuta thanked him for his comment and stated that they still had some leftover mayamu, and they were going to close the store for now. However, Kamua came running and asked if he made it. Asuta said that they were closed, but he refused because thought he made it. He smelled mayamu, so he asked if he made a new menu item. Asuta confirmed him, but he explained that they already packed everything up. Dora offered her daughter's giba meat, but Kamua refused. He said that this was the new menu item and he didn't modify the giba meat as much. He decided to come back tomorrow because he didn't want to take another person's meal. When Kamua asked if he could reserve one for him, he asked if he was planning to eat it by himself again. Kamua explained that even though Leto was handsome like that, he wasn't good with strong foods like mayamu even though he tried to remove the scent. Asuta seemed to figure out something but didn't say anything when Vina asked and they started packing up. The next day arrived, and Asuta thanked everyone once again. Vina noticed that Aifa looked a bit tired. She said that he was daydreaming a little even though the actual reason was that she couldn't sleep last night because of the delicious smell and her empty stomach. She wondered if what Asuta made last night would sell well today. They arrived at the store and started opening up. Ruto noticed the container that he had never needed before. Asuta explained that it was the giba meat he left in mayamu sauce overnight. When Aifa was about to explain what he did last night, Dora and Tara came and brought the vegetables Asuta asked for. He mentioned that since those were for him, they were very special. Tara also came with them today because she wanted to see how Mayamu was cooked. It looked like the cooked Mayamu she ate yesterday was able to satisfy her belly. The woman from yesterday, Yumi, came and wondered what was going on. Even though it was a strange store that sold Giba meat, she wondered why Genos's people watching the clerk enjoy. Asuta noticed that she was watching them again, and he seemed quite comfortable, which made her pretty angry. She came to the stall and said he was trying to sell those things again, while Asuta seemed happy that she came. Tara interrupted her, saying that those were not things, and asked her to look closely. She decided to stick around for her. Asuta started cooking. Tara noticed that even though they were thinly sliced Mayamu yesterday, there weren't any today, but from this pot, they could smell Mayamu. Yumi was still confused as to why this smell was bringing people in. Asuta answered that it was because they mixed some Mayamu that they ground up into this sauce and he left it there overnight. That was the reason why it smelled good, and added the leftover sauce on top of that, mixing it properly. Once the flour was mixed in, he took it out of the pot and the cooked Giba meat with Mayamu sauce was completed. Dora and Tara were impressed that he was using Mayamu in such a good way, and wanted one. Asuta asked Yumi to try this one more time if it was okay. When she asked the reason, he said that he wasn't trying to sell it to her, he just wanted her to experience the flavor of it. She was confused because she was sure it would be the same as yesterday, but decided to eat one. She took a bite, and this time she didn't stop with one bite and continued eating. When she finished, he asked how it was. He responded that it was not as bad as she thought with an attitude and she wanted to pay him, but Asuta refused because he wanted her to experience the taste. But Yumi insisted and stated that she was sorry for calling this annoying yesterday. Asuta was sure she said something along those lines but didn't say anything to her. She started walking away and Asuta thanked her with a smile on his face. This was the first customer whom they didn't know beforehand. Vina was also surprised that she ate it the next day. She said she didn't like it. Tara responded that it's because it's so yummy. The flavor was much deeper than yesterday and she would want to eat the meat alone. Asuta now understood that the people who live here in town have their own tastes. Kamua came to buy the Mayamu sauce, Giba meat. Asuta thanked him yesterday, but he didn't understand what he was talking about. Asuta didn't explain it and started cooking. Since Kamua always praised him for no real reason, he couldn't understand anything from that because he was telling them how good the food tasted. Asuta was so happy that he finally had his own store and he was borrowing a hand from many people. And many people were eating his food. They were getting even more business than before. There were some times he wondered if he was dreaming. While Kamua was paying for the food, Vina noticed that the Shimu people were coming. Tara, Dora, and Kamua left there. Asuta asked the Shimu people what they would like to have today, but they said that they were here to talk. Aifa couldn't hear what they were saying to Asuta and wondered what was going on. The atmosphere was a little different than usual. Asuta left the stall and came to Aifa, saying that he had something he needed to discuss with her. Aifa asked what was the meaning of this. When Asuta was explaining what the Shimu people asked him, Aifa saw one of them showing out his knife. Aifa became aggressive, but Asuta explained that it didn't involve violence. Aifa calmed down and let the Shimu people bring them to the place where they sell silver vases. Asuta was impressed by how they handled this many things at once. It would have been better if Rudo had come with them, but he was addicted to the Giba burger and he decided to take the house-sitting job. Aifa asked what the discussion was about because he wouldn't bring her here just to look at the vases. He said that about the shumaral, the knife they saw Shimu people holding, he felt like he could cut vegetables much easier with that. Aifa asked what he wanted to say once again. He said that he wanted to buy tools for their shop with the money that they made, and Aifa told him to go ahead without a pause. Asuta didn't expect her to accept this quickly. She said that he was the one who made the money, and he could do whatever he wanted with it. He thought he had to get permission from the family head. The Shimu man asked if he was going to buy it and which one he would buy. He said that he wanted him to show him more things first. Aifa noticed that it would take some time for Asuta to decide what to buy. She started looking around, and the decorations weren't that good and it didn't look like they focused on that sort of stuff. Vina seemed to like a necklace. While they were looking around, Asuta finished his work. Aifa noticed that he bought quite a lot, but he explained saying that it wasn't a lot, they were just big, and he also bought stuff he wanted to give to Aifa as well. She said that this would go against the customs of the forest people, but he still wanted her to take a look at it. He took out a necklace from his pocket and Aifa said that it would be fine as it wouldn't affect her hunting. Asuta said that he wasn't a hunter so he couldn't get her a tooth as a charm, but he wanted to give her some sort of charm anyway, so he bought this. Aifa accepted his gift and he seemed happy. It was hard for her to put on with one hand, so he helped her. When he helped her wear the necklace, he asked if it felt fine, and she confirmed him. Vina Ruu noticed that Aifa was smiling at her necklace and commented that it looked nice. The Shimu man asked if she wanted to buy it, so she said that she would come by again. With that, they left their shop and went to their own stall. Rudo Ruu was sitting there and he finished eating all of it. Now it was time to do their best before nightfall. They light the fire again and cut more Arya. At night, Aifa noticed that Asuta wasn't in his bed, so she looked outside. She saw him sitting alone. She asked if he was having a hard time sleeping, and he responded that it wasn't that he couldn't. He just thought it was a waste. He explained that they only thought about making money in the first 10 days. But they met and talked to a lot of people and experienced many things. There was something new every day, and even though they had some problems, he had fun cooking like this. That's why he was spending his time like that. Aifa wanted to have fun with him tomorrow as well. And the 10th day had come, time went by as normal. They were closing their store for real and they had to take down their sign. Asuta thanked Rudo Ryu and promised to pay the fee and came back. He asked if he could take everything and go home ahead of him. Rudo seemed so sad, so he told him to not make a face like he was about to cry. They had enough money, so they went to Kamura's place to negotiate. Kamura received the payment for the day's rent, and he noticed that Asuta looked like he had something else to say. Asuta said that he wanted to ask him something. Kamura wondered what happened, and he responded that he wanted to extend the rent's duration. Kamura figured that the reason was because he learned that he could make a profit with the Giba meat. That was also a part of it, but he also wanted to see a new world. In the beginning, he was only thinking about managing the stall, but while meeting a lot of different people in this town, he realized that all he wanted was to make a lot of people eat his food. Kamura was pleased with his goal, and he promised to speak to the owner himself. Asuta didn't expect him to be this easy, so he was a little surprised. Kamura said that he had everything handled. Asuta wanted to be happy, but somehow he couldn't. Aifa asked if that wasn't great and stated that she was also really happy that she could continue to eat his food. Asuta was now happy, and he thanked her. In the next scene, Rudo was talking like he didn't want to work again. Vina Ryu stated that he was just being stubborn and that he was the one who had red eyes after they gave back the stall. Rudo tried to run away by saying they just needed to go to Genos Town again from tomorrow. With that, tomorrow arrived and they reopened their stall in Genos Town. After all, this place felt right for Asuta. Yumi, the woman who didn't like his first Giba meat, came and stated that she was surprised to see the stall not being here yesterday. He was surprised that she came purposely to check. She ignored his comment and wanted one cooked Mayamu. And with that, the peaceful days came back at about that time. People also seemed more interested in the Giba meat. Suddenly, Asuta felt something shaking and Vina felt it too. A big chubby man was running towards them asking for the food he was selling. He showed the bag of coins he had and wanted one. Asuta asked Vina Ryu what she was thinking and noticed that she was not responding. Based on her reaction, Asuta kind of figured out who this person was. Aifa and Rudo also seemed angry. This person was the Sun family's elder brother who tried to assault her and she struck him back. And so, if she gets involved with the Ryu family, the Sun family wouldn't stay silent. Asuta recalled seeing him before and now he remembered. But he was still a client in his eyes, so he accepted to make it for the money he had. Someone eating like him would make him happy as a cook, but this was a battle. He told Vina to chop off Tino in a large area. Asuta believed that if he returned home satisfied with this, it would end without trouble. This man ate so much that there was no time left. And it was the last Giba meat that he cooked. Asuta handed him the last cooked Mayamu with extra Giba meat. He was hoping that he would stop there, but he ate the Giba meat and asked for the next one. Asuta calmly explained that they didn't have any ingredients left, so that was the last one. He gave him back the remaining money, but Mita started crying his eyes out. A woman came and commented that not being able to receive the request of only one client was a weak-willed move. It was Yamiru. She said that they couldn't do anything and then noticed that Aifa was standing there, and she called her the person who deceived their little brother and spread bad rumors. She also called Vina and Rudo the incompetent members who refused to obey their family. She was really unpleasant with them. Mita was still crying because of hunger, but she told him to not be childish because if he came back home like that, he would be punished. Asuta had enough of her and scolded her for trying to hurt even her own family member. She didn't seem to be bothered by his words and said that if he was so pitiful, the Ryu family's firekeeper there made more of an effort and asked if it would be fine if the Sun family took the firekeeper role and made something for Mita. She also included Aifa in this. She made fun of her for not having a third person in his FA family. She claimed that Asuta wasn't even thinking about refusing. Asuta asked about the conditions because otherwise they can't measure. They just have to prepare the dinner and it would be fine. Yamiru confirmed him and explained that the family head meeting was going to occur at the Sun family, so they should make preparations for it. However, including the Giba meat, he would have to get enough ingredients for 70 people. As payment, they would prepare money for 40 Giba. Asuta was confused because they could get that much meat themselves. Yamiru stated that if there was something he didn't understand, he could ask the Ryu family. They went to the Ryu family's head, and Asuta said that the woman called Yamiru-sun ordered them to make preparations for the family head meeting. Gazuran Rutim said that the time for the meeting was close, and Asuta asked if it was something that would cause them trouble. He said that there was no problem with the meeting itself, but aiming for the head of the families close to the forest meet, and the fact that the Sun family intentionally made contact with him worried him. He didn't see them during the stall's test period. He thought that people from Genos didn't accept people from the forest, but he wondered if this had a connection. Someone entered the room and it was Jiba Ryu. Aifa asked if she was alright by herself, but Reina was following her. She heard that the Sun family gave them a hard time in the city. Donda said that the people from the Sun family annoy him, but he didn't plan on saying anything about what happened in the city. He did say he would lend him a hand, but that was something he decided himself. He didn't plan on getting others involved. Jiba Ryu found him reasonable, but it wasn't about that for her. He said that it was about the contract they signed 80 years ago. It was about prohibiting the harvest of the forest's blessings and accepting to engage in Giba hunting. The trade with the city ceased, and the families that couldn't hunt died out. That's why it pains her to see the forest people bitter and suffering at the hands of townspeople. Asuta called Jiba Ryu and firmly stated that there was no need for her to be the only one tormented by a guilty conscience. And the actual city was because the trade ceased that there were new encounters. About Yamiru-sun, he was angry a lot, so this had nothing to do with the past, and he wanted to knock them down by his own will. She said that this was something that affects the Ruu family as well, so he can't run wild on his own. Aifa said that they were going to confront them with their way of doing things. Donda was willing to lend him men and women from the Ruu clan to carry the ingredients, and they planned to leave early on that day. With that, the day of the family head meeting came. Before they were about to arrive at the Sun family, Ruto asked Asuta if he was alright, and he was okay. An old man named T-Sun greeted them and led them somewhere. The atmosphere was so gloomy and nervous. He showed them the place they were going to put their ingredients. This place was the fire hut of the Sun family. He looked inside and saw a bunch of people. He introduced himself as the family's Asuta, the firekeeper for today, and was about to ask them for a favor for the family head meeting preparation, but they stopped listening to him mid-sentence. Aifa told Asuta to pull himself together and not let them get to him. Vina and Reina were also there and expressed their support for him. Asuta decided to start cooking and they worked cooperatively together. While cooking, Reina warned a girl from the Sun family that it was stuck in the pot, so she should be careful, but she didn't and spilled the whole pot on her. Reina asked for the others' help, but no one in Sun's family cared about her. Vina came and suggested carrying her to the river and cooling her off because it would be dangerous to leave her like that. They told Asuta that they relied on him for now and left. Thanks to those two instructions, the cooking was progressing and there was no delay. There was only one problem: the quantity of food inside the drop pot. They lost those ingredients and needed an equivalent amount back. There was nothing they could do about that, so Asuta offered to pay the charge in exchange for their stocked provisions. However, those women were not responsive to anything, leaving Asuta in shock. The job of firekeeper was taken care of by the women, so they should know about the ingredients as well, so he was puzzled. Asuta asked them for the ingredients, but they were not responding. The footsteps were heard, and after a second, Mita-sun was inside the kitchen at the worst time possible. He didn't want to think about the possibility of Mita coming here to eat something when they didn't have enough ingredients, but then realized that he might have a chance to know where the ingredients were. Mita said that he wanted to eat the thing he was selling at the stall, and Asuta replied that he wanted to make him some, but he would have to borrow some ingredients from the Sun family's stock, otherwise he couldn't. He asked Misa if he could guide him to the granary. His plan worked and Mita led him to the granary. Unlike the others, Mita didn't seem to be acting strange. He pointed at the granary and said that it should be fine if there was a firekeeper. The granary was so big that it wouldn't lose against one of the Ryu family. He was sure they would be able to cover the loss. Mita tried to open the door, but even though he used all his power, it wouldn't open. Asuta was puzzled once again because the granary should be used every day, so it would be pointless to lock the door. He asked how long had it been like this and asked Mita if yesterday's dinner had been prepared correctly. Mita said that he always eats in the city, such as Kim Yusu's meat buns. Asuta wondered if Mita was an exception, but their money couldn't support him every day. Mita asked what happened and he was worried that Asuta wouldn't be able to make him some food. Asuta decided to think about making dinner for now. While he was thinking about how to open the door, a T-Sun came and asked what was happening and what business he had with the granary. He said that the ingredients they brought with them became insufficient. T-Sun thought he came to steal from granary. He said that they would pay the compensation, so he asked him to share some of their stocks, but T told him to stop acting like a thief. He told him to ask a family member. Asuta said that he asked the firekeeper girls, but they didn't answer him. T then responded that it might be because they thought he wasn't trustworthy enough. It was pointless to continue talking with him as he was thinking about what to do with the ingredients. Rudo came and asked what he was doing. T-sun said that since the people from the Ru family were here, there was no need for the Sun family to give him ingredients, and asked him to leave immediately. Before they leave, Asuta saw him scolding Mita for coming there. Asuta thanked Rudo and asked why he was there. He said that he saw Vina and the others running around and he heard what they said, so he was worried that something happened. Asuta said that this time they were low on ingredients and he couldn't help him. However, Rudo stated that he was going to go to the city right away and buy them and he could pay him later. Asuta thanked him and started listing the things he needed. When Rudo left, Asuta decided to go back to work. Luckily, Vina and Reina returned, and by getting everyone's help, the preparations for the family head meeting progressed and the meeting began. They saw the family heads gathering and Vina asked if he was planning to stay. He decided to wait for his payment, which would happen at the end of the meeting. There was no way the Sun family would pay in advance. Reina was confused because they could also pay Aifa, who was also part of the meeting. She guessed that they might want Asuta to be alone. They told him to be careful and had to leave. Asuta was sure something was off even about that granary. He wondered about the family heads' opinions, so he started listening to them behind the door. They were talking about Asuta's food. One of them stated that for a small clan like theirs, they didn't have the capacity to do that, and for the Sun family who had the money for it, it was easy. But for those from the small clans, they were too busy hunting one giba. Aifa talked, stating that it was reasonable. She said that every family couldn't hunt enough giba, and that was the reason why the Sun family should distribute its wealth. The Sun family laughed at her for suggesting that she was from a family arbitrarily selling giba meat in town, and told her that if she insisted, she should be the one offering to supply giba meat. Asuta knew that whatever the world, the discord between rich and poor would never disappear. There was no point in him staying here, so he started walking away. He was feeling guilty for abandoning Mita even though he was the one who showed him the granary. He wanted to apologize and started looking for him. Yamiru-san saw him and asked why he was restlessly wandering around people's houses. He said that he couldn't receive his payment before the meeting ended, so he was waiting. Yamiru said that she could prepare it for him and asked him to wait in that building because paying him in the middle of the street felt wrong. Her sane reaction was somehow even more terrifying, but he still agreed and started walking towards the building. If this was a plan to capture him as a hostage against Aifa, or a threat towards him, as long as Aifa was in the family meeting, she would be with Donda, so he would not let anything happen to her. At the meeting, a bald man asked if waiting and seeing would be fine, and the meeting ended and nothing changed. Someone bumped into Aifa's injured shoulder and it was Diga-san. He said that he would give something to stop the pain and dragged her somewhere. He captured her and said that he was fine with forgetting everything up until now, as long as she agreed to continue the marriage ceremony with him. Meanwhile, the building Asuta was in was so dark that he could not see anything. Yamiru opened the door and went inside with a fully naked body, asking to start their marriage ceremony. As Asuta didn't respond to her, she asked if he was too stunned to speak. She was unable to see him as it was pretty dark, and wondered if he was always this big. He eventually spoke, stating that he was surprised. She lit up a light and saw that Asuta had something on his head and he was not seeing her naked body. He knew she would be naked, and if he looked at her, she would threaten to either gouge out his eyes or marry her. He could see through it even if he couldn't see her. Yamiru called him stupid and stated that she was no longer interested and left. He wanted to be cautious, so he didn't open his cover and went outside. He accidentally grabbed a breast and had to open his eyes. Thankfully, it was just Mita, and Asuta was so happy to see him. He apologized for not keeping his promise. He then had an idea and told him to wait here. He knew Yamiru should be close by. She was actually talking with T-sun, and apparently it was his plan. He asked if she was close to Granary and she said she wasn't. Something was going on with the Granary because if T-sun was here, then the family head meeting would have been over, but he couldn't see Aifa. Meanwhile, Aifa kicked Diga's head and knocked him out. Donda came looking for her since he thought the sons might try something, but she didn't seem to need him. Aifa said that Diga might have seen him and let his guard down, so he actually did save her. Now they were sure that they planned something for this meeting. Aifa also remembered Asuta and they started looking for themselves. They saw each other eventually and she asked what he was doing with Mita. He said that he helped him with the ingredients during the day, though in the end they were asked to leave the granary. Asuta said that they were clearly keeping members of other families away from there. Aifa found this suspicious because he was a firekeeper. Donda decided to go to the Sun family granary. Zuro-san came and called them fools for causing such a riot in another family's territory. Donda said that if he was interfering with another family's head over a simple granary, something was definitely suspicious. Zuro grabbed Donda, and when Donda glanced at Aifa and the others, they understood the plan and started running towards the granary. Zuro warned Donda to not get in his way, but he simply explained that he just wanted to hear a convincing explanation. While they were running to the granary, Aifa asked about the details. Asuta said that there were no keys to be found around the granary. Suddenly, Dan Rutim came and asked what they were doing. Aifa asked why he was still there, and he said that he was hungry and couldn't sleep. When he learned that they were going to the granary, he decided to come as well. Meanwhile, someone was watching them from a distance. They arrived at the granary, and Danrutim asked if Asuta could do something with their giba meat. He said that they couldn't open the door before that. T-sun came and reminded Mida that he told him to not come here. Asuta was in a dilemma because they were so close to seeing what their secret was, but with that, Mida would be in so much trouble. While he was thinking about what to do, Danrutim told T-sun to shut up and stated that he wanted to eat some grilled meat. Asuta had an idea, and he said that he would open the door. When Mida said this was impossible, Asuta smiled at him and stated that he had to listen to the requests of customers who wanted to eat his food, including him. T and Danrutim were still arguing. He asked Danrutim to leave, but Danrutim told him to try something if he really thought he could do it. Aifa wanted to help Danrutim, but Donda came and said that he got Zuro's son. Before he knew it, he suddenly lost consciousness, so he brought him along. They heard someone telling them to stop. Donda wondered what that voice was. The voice was heard again, telling them to not open. T-sun seemed horrified, calling the name Zatsu-sun, who was the previous family head who was ill in bed. An old ugly man started running towards them, screaming at them, so Donda told them to open it quickly. Danrutim said that he would stop him while Asuta focused on opening the door. Asuta decided to charge it with all his strength. Asuta and Mida gave all their might to crack the door, and they were successful this time. However, there was nothing inside the granary. Asuta asked for Mida's help to bring out what was inside. They went outside with what the Sun family was hiding. It looked like a bar was placed on the inside. There was nothing other than the forest grace. Not even giba meat. Looked like there was a secret passage for the family members. That old man started screaming when Aifa told her that they reached out their hands to the prohibited mountain's grace, and not only that they lived thoughtlessly with money without even hunting jibas, which was against the rules. With that, the Sun family was finished. Several days after the troublesome family head meeting, Asuta and Aifa went to Jibaru to tell her what happened. Although she should have heard from Dondaru, she still asked them to come and tell her what happened. She asked how Zatsu was. Asuta knew that she was talking about the old man who was screaming. Before Asuta responded to her, Aifa said that the reason Jibaru called them was because she wanted to know about Zatsu. Jibaru understood that she realized it. She said that Jiba told them about the contract, and she thought she might be worried that they broke the contract. Jibaru confirmed her, saying that he spoke with Zatsu about the contract a long time ago, and it was strange that although there was so much fruit in the forest, they wouldn't take it. He told her when they were kids that there was nothing they could do, and in exchange for being able to live in the forest, they made a contract to hunt the giba and use them as food. Jibaru noticed that he had lots of wounds on his arms, and it was because he wasn't used to hunting yet. He said that they have to build up their strength and hold the giba, because they have to protect the future inhabitants of the forest. That was how he spoke when they were young. The son he wanted to protect was waiting for his judgment. T-sun moved at this beck and call, and he was waiting too. However, Yamiru, the one who tried to show his evil deeds, and Mida, the pure one who was never told anything, were going to go live with other families, leaving behind everything that Zatsu wanted to protect. Asuta said to Jibaru that the Zatsu he saw was a person who couldn't understand anything. Jiba thanked her and wanted to get some fresh air. They helped her out and went outside. It was a good sunny day. Asuta thought that those two from the story long ago should have been looking at the same sky. The next morning, Asuta wakes up and sees Aifa stretching, which means her arm was completely healed. She said that from today she was going to work as a hunter. At first, Asuta was happy, but then he realized that she wouldn't be near him. Aifa said that he bothered him for quite some time, and with him in the city, and her in the forest, she wanted to protect their house. Her words cheered him up. She then informed him that a chieftain who replaced the Sun family headed for the city to make a report. The Sun family used to go in and out of the city. In the next scene, Asuta is back in business with his team. He brought giba meat to Rudo and apologized for being late. He gave him the burgers to help him out. Rudo reminded him that he promised to reward him with 20 giba burgers, so he promised to give him more. Someone grabbed his shirt and it was Tara. She said that she was on a mission and was sent by her father. Asuta asked what it was about. She said that his father wished he could eat some freshly cooked mayamu, so she came to ask if he still could do it. She gave the money and wanted 2 cooked mayamu for her father and herself. Asuta immediately started cooking and Vina helped him. She gave him some tino cut in big chunks. He asked why she gave it to him, and she said that the Shimu people were coming that way. Asuta gave 2 cooked mayamu to Tara before the Shimu people came, and she left. The Shimu people asked for 11 cooked mayamu and 6 giba burgers. When Asuta told them to wait for a little while, he prepared the giba meats, and one of them called his name. He also recalled that his name was Shumararu. Shumararu asked how the goods that he bought were. When he was about to comment on the knife he bought from them, Vina Ru grabbed his shirt and pointed at her necklace. Asuta was confused and couldn't understand what she was talking about even when she asked if he was always wearing it. Eventually, Vina had to explain to Shumiraru that she was properly wearing the blue stone necklace every day and was certainly happy to have it. Shumiraru asked for Vinaru's name and they started talking. Vinaru was paying more attention than Asuta thought. He decided to not let himself be helped out and strive to become someone who helps others out. He prepared their order and they left with satisfaction. Vinaru mentioned how she felt like they were back to the ordinary days and Asuta agreed. He noticed that Reito was coming too. He asked what happened and if Kamua sent him on an errand again. He said that Kamua had something to discuss with him. Asuta guessed that he would talk about the stall and decided to go as they almost reached their quota for the day. Reito and Asuta headed over to Kamua's place and arrived at his room. When they entered, Kamua seemed pretty miserable and said that something annoying happened. He seemed to have a mental breakdown and he was questioning many things like which route to take when departing and who he should go with. He said that even though he prepared everything was ruined. Apparently, he had a few days until the deadline for something and he didn't have a guide. Asuta was puzzled by every single word. Kamua asked if he had forgotten his work and Asuta couldn't answer his question. Their facial expressions changed dramatically and Kamua broke down, telling him that he told the first time they met in the forest that he came to investigate for his job of protecting merchant convoys. Asuta felt like he heard something like he had come to the forest for some preparations, but he didn't know the reason so he asked, which made him even more frustrated. But he explained that he was going to protect the merchant from Genos City to the Eastern Kingdom. The route through the forest hadn't been used in decades, but the Lord of Genos planned to restore it. However, there was an issue with this. Giba inside the forest attacked people and merchants were even attacked by unknown people in the past. There were dangerous places like that bridge he fell from. That was the reason why the route was abandoned. However, this time he moved himself and asked the forest people to help and made previous arrangements. When he was done with the preparations, he heard that the Sun family, whom he asked to act as guides, had disappeared, and he asked if he knew anything about that. The silence after this question was pretty long. He didn't know the Sun family broke the contract, and the reason for the three family heads to come to the city was certainly because of that report. He was partly involved with the Sun family, but it didn't directly relate to him. There were only a few days left, so Kamua was desperate for help. Asuta said that he didn't know about the Sun family, but he wanted to help him out with anything now. However, Kamua didn't seem to be able to think about a solution now. Asuta asked if the paper on the table was the contract he made with the Sun family, and Kamua confirmed him, but added that it was made specifically for the Sun family. Asuta said that if he was fine with it, he could try looking for a family that would help him among the other people of the forest. Kamua said that for visiting a family they need to negotiate, but it was fine for Asuta. He said that right now, he was going to return to the forest with people from the Ru family, so he asked for more details. Kamua seemed a little more alive and started explaining the details to him. After giving the details, Asuta left, telling them to not worry. In the next scene, we see Asuta with Gazuran Rutim. Asuta was so embarrassed to ask him, but he told him that it was fine. Gazuran knew he only came because the Ru family had him on a mission. He said that suddenly imposing something like that on him was a bit weird. Asuta thought that the Ru family would do it, but Donda told him that it was the responsibility of the Rutim or the Saudi family. Thankfully, Gazuran Rutim accepted his request. Asuta showed him the plan they discussed with the Sun family, and Gazuran took a look at the paper. He said that they planned to pass through the forest using the road from west to east. With that, they would avoid both the brigands at the border region in the north and the desert region in the south. Moreover, the Giba were migrating to continue eating the mountain's grace. During this season, this road should be safe. The choice of the path itself didn't have any issues, but there was a point stuck in his mind. Not just the road and the date, but he wondered if the details of the goods and the cart that would be used were really something he told others. Even the numbers of guards from Genos were written, and the fact they decided everything in so much detail suspected him. Asuta told him that Kamua said that was the agreement with the Genos Lord and they had to make it succeed. Gazuran said that the trade for the East should be quite valuable for Genos, so he decided to let the Saudi family know about this. Asuta thanked him and went back home. A few days later, Gazuran Rutim and Kamua met, and he told Kamua that the representatives of the forest people replacing the Sun family, the Saudi family, and himself from the Rutim family would be his guides. As a guard from Genos, Kamua and his partner Zashume would be in charge of this expedition. Asuta was pleasant with how things went. Even though it was sudden thanks to Gazuran Rutim's management, everything went perfectly. With that, they finally left and now Asuta has to take care of his own shop. He noticed that a man was calling him. It was Murano Masu, the man who lent him the stand. When Asuta said that Kamua wasn't here today, Murano Masu said that he wanted to see him for once, and he heard him saying he had to take care of his own shop. He said that if he wanted to have a proper business, Having multiple stalls would be better. Asuta noticed that he was good at business, but right now when the people of Shimu came, they had their hands full. And yet for a second stand, they would have to further develop each part of the business or they would lack the goods. Asuta said that he would like to do it, but he was concerned about his supplies and asked if he didn't know that ingredients could be expensive. In that case, Murano Masu suggested he try going to the mansion ahead and he might find something interesting. Asuta went to the mansion. He didn't know about the building, but there was a smell from the entrance and it was a smell that made him remember when he was back in Japan. It was soy sauce. He wondered where that smell could be coming from and entered the mansion. Someone welcomed him and stated that if he wanted to stay, this was the reception. He said that he was still a customer. He said they had interesting ingredients here and wanted to see them. The man asked if he was talking about Tao sauce. He showed Asuta the sauce and it was soy sauce. He wasn't 100% sure, but he asked if he could give him a little of it. The man said that this was sent specially from the Kingdom of the South, so it would be expensive. Asuta noticed that he was good at business but still wanted to buy it. When he left with the sauce, the man was curious about his identity. He recalled him as the person who was selling Giba meat food from the forest people. Meanwhile, Rudo was worried because he was still not back from seeing off the merchant group. Asuta came and apologized for being late. They wondered about the ingredients he bought. When he said he was going to start preparations right away, Vina couldn't help but ask what he was holding. He said that it was Tao sauce and he didn't know exactly about it. Vina-ru said that it was a fermented product made from Tao beans that only grew in the South Kingdom Jagaru, and it was a luxury product that was rarely used even at home. It sounded even more like soy sauce, so he wanted to have taste. When he tasted it, he confirmed that it was soy sauce. He felt so emotional to have a taste of something from his own world. Vina thought Asuta was crying because of her saying it was a difficult product to get, but Asuta refused. He said that he wanted to sell a new dish by using that Tao sauce. Rudo and Vina found this idea great. Asuta said that while doing the usual dishes today, he was going to try to think of how to use that sauce. When Asuta first arrived here, he was busy just trying to manage the situation right in front of him, but now that he could act more freely, he came across such a nostalgic flavor. He started thinking about connecting to Japan someday, but then Aifa's smiling face came in front of his eyes and he came back to reality. He decided to focus on making a new recipe to extend the shop. He was done with cooking the Giba meat for the cooked Mayamu, so he was going to use his pan. After a while, his new dish, boiled Giba cube, was finished. They all tasted the meat together and there was nothing else to say, it was perfect. Asuta was thinking of selling it at twice the price of the Giba burger and they agreed with him. However, that was not a complete version of the boiled cube yet. He had a better method and meat part that he was planning to finish tomorrow. Vina and Rudo were looking forward to seeing what he was going to come up with tomorrow. Assuming they get the supplies for the two shops, he asked if he could ask the Ru family for additional support. Rudo thought it was a little early to decide on that, but Vina was sure Reina would come. The next chapter begins with Vina asking Asuta if he is going to start selling that new product. It looked like some people were already here to buy it. Asuta was so happy and he started opening the shop right away. Tara and her father were ready to taste the first new dish. Asuta let the Tao sauce and fruit alcohol rest overnight and simmered Giba meat in it. Everyone was amazed by how it looked. It seemed to be even more full of flavor than yesterday, as Vina said. Now it was time to stab it on a skewer so it doesn't fall. Tara and her father bought two, and he asked if Asuta was going to wrap it like always. He wanted to preserve the meat's flavor. If he gave it in the form of a bamboo boat and poured the sauce from above, it would be done. The meal was called the Giba meat skewer. It didn't look at all like something from a street stall. The truth was that Asuta wanted to make a wooden bowl, but he tried to cut poitan, but the leaf he usually uses as a plate seemed enough. He asked him to try it because it should be possible to eat it without any issue. He ate it quietly, which made him a little nervous. However, Dora stated that it was so delicious that he could not even believe it was the same Giba meat he had eaten until now. He was counting on him for Tara's portion too. Asuta prepared hers too and gave it to her, but she didn't eat it. Asuta asked if she wouldn't eat it, and apparently she was impressed by how it looked. Asuta thanked her but stated that it would taste better if she ate it before it got cold. Tara was about to eat it but then noticed that her hands were moist. Asuta took a look at her hands, but before he could do anything, Dora told Tara to eat it quickly. Dora asked what happened, and he said that the sauce permeated the leaf as she took her time eating it. He didn't really think this through. He said that street stall goods should stay delicious and easy to eat anywhere at any time. He thought the Tao sauce that was close to the soy sauce was a good product, but skewers didn't fit a street stall. Dora agreed to him and gave the money for the skewers. When Dora said he would prefer to take his time eating in an eatery, he wanted to take his time enjoying delicious products. The first floor of the inn was an eatery. Asuta was still a little confused and indecisive. He said that it wasn't like he was managing an eatery, and hearing this, Dora told him to come with him. He took him to the place where he bought the Tao sauce. Dora asked him to leave the carpeting to him if his skewers sell well and he needs to remodel his shop. Asuta apologized to the man at the reception and stated that he had something to discuss with him. In Japan, he couldn't do something like that at all, so he was quite hesitant. But this world wasn't Japan. He said that he cooked something with the Tao sauce he acquired from him the other day, and he asked if he would accept it as goods for his inn. He knew that he was asking something reckless, but still hoped for a good response. Fortunately, the man smiled and said that he would test it out to see if it was good enough to serve the customers. Asuta was shocked. The man prepared for testing. Even though they were his trade rivals with the street stall, he couldn't believe he accepted to try it. The man tasted his dish and started crying because of how delicious this was. He also stated that he had been trying to find a way to use the Tao sauce in cooking for many years, but he couldn't find it. He became a cook himself to try and make his ideal dish, and it would be so good if he could achieve it. Asuta apologized, and now it looked like he did something unnecessary. But the man didn't agree with him and thanked him for giving him hope. He said that there was still a future for his Tao sauce. His name was Naudus. He wanted to buy it and they made a contract. After that, Asuta went to see Vina and Rudo and told them what happened and how good of a man Naudus was. He secured an income outside the stall. The stall menu didn't get a new item, but he had the same feeling as Naudus. There were more possibilities for the Tao sauce and he wanted to find another recipe. A customer came and asked for one baked Maimu Giba meat. Asuta suppressed the bad smell of the Giba meat with Miyamu, and the citizens eat the grilled Giba meat, but they even eat simmered dishes like the boiled cubes. This gave him an idea. There was a cooking method he wanted to try. At home, Aifa was shocked at how today's dinner was more luxurious than usual. He said that it was a tried and true product for the stall. Aifa tasted it and stated that the new Giba meat dish weirdly made her want to eat some poitan. That was a good opinion for Asuta. At the stall, Vina was surprised to see Asuta starting preparations right away. Asuta said that the new product was a sukiyaki-like Giba meat. They didn't know about sukiyaki, but they guessed that it was simmering more than grilling. He lightly cooked the meat after it was pre-treated with pico leaves and then simmered it with fruit alcohol and Tao sauce. Raid came commenting on the gentle smell. He wanted to have one. Asuta asked if Kamua wasn't there today. Asuta noticed that Raid had more of an image of the watchdog of Kamua. He said that he tried to recreate the taste of his home country today. He gave it to Raid and he noticed that it had the same shape as the Miyamu. Asuta said that that was the reason why it was even easier to tell the difference in taste. Raid tried it out and smiled, saying that it somehow had a gentle taste. Asuta was glad to hear that. A man came in a hurry and told Raid that something terrible had happened. Apparently, Kamua returned, but he was covered in blood. Raid was stunned at first when he heard that Kamua was covered in blood and then started running. After a few minutes, the whole street was talking about this topic. Asuta was worried that something bad happened to Kamua. Vina-Ru noticed that and told him that there were no customers. He asked if it would be fine if he went to take a look. Vina told him to just go, and Asuta promised to not go too far. He went to where people were gathered, wondering where he was. He saw Raid standing there with Kamua. He was relieved to see him not looking badly injured. But noticing his clothes, Asuta asked what happened. Kamua said that it wasn't his. It was remnants of the Sun family, Zatsu-san. Asuta was shocked because he was supposed to be imprisoned in Genos to receive punishment as the previous family head for breaking the forest's contract. Kamua thanked for Asuta's detailed explanation, and then he started telling the whole story. Returning to before the departure of the merchant group, Kamua was having a breakdown over the Sun family being taken down. Raid noticed that he was in a bad mood. Kamua said that even though he prepared a false group of merchants to bring to light the evil actions of the Sun family, they tried to get attacked on their way. He then realized that he made Raid recall something bad. Raid said that it was his fault for not having gotten over it yet, and then Kamua told him to go to Asuta's place as a change of pace. After their conversation with Asuta, Kamua was so happy that Asuta introduced him to forest people. With that, they could send merchants without any issues. Before he left, Raid said that he would pray for his safety on the road. They then shook hands with Gazuram Rutim. The man next to Kamua had never thought they would interact with the people of the forest again. But this time, they could depart for sure. The goods of the merchants were fake, and the merchants themselves were soldiers. All of this was to lure the suspects of the attack, the Sun family, and make them pay for it. That was Kamua's job for a long time. A little while ago, they received information that the previous head of the Sun family escaped, and it would be great if he attacked their merchant group. He was concerned about Raid though. While on their way, the Saudi people said that the Sun family was the culprit. Kamua fought with one of them and took it down. He was also informed that Zatsu-san deliberately used the fruit that attracts Giba and they were planning to attack them. Kamua figured that this was what they did 10 years ago and decided to fight them. The blood on his coat was mostly the Giba blood. Raid knew Kamua's goal, and that's why he was down, because he was worried. He decided to bring his new recipe to Kamua's place after closing the shop today to ease their mind. Asuta was horrified when he saw Zatsu gaining consciousness. After hearing Zatsu's voice, Raid recalled his memories. He was watching the Sun people attacking and stealing their goods. Until a little while ago, everyone was happy in his life, and suddenly, a black mass attacked them. The Sun family thought there were no survivors and there wasn't any issue with the cargo. Everyone was killed. The raid couldn't even stand still after recalling everyone being killed in front of him by the Sun family. Kamua also seemed worried. Zatsu kept repeating Tae-sun's name. Kamua looked at him with a straight face and he said that he had to bring back the honor of the Sun family. Zatsu then noticed that the man in front of him was not Tae-sun and asked if he was a citizen of the Stone City. When Kamua confirmed him, he was shocked. He suddenly started screaming at him, asking if he had forgotten his debt to the forest people. He claimed that he was keeping them imprisoned in that jail called Forest without hunting Giba with his strength. Kamua didn't respond to him. He continued saying that his wealth was supposed to be their wealth and Tae-sun, and he guided him corrupted citizens of the Stone City on the correct path. Asuta was barely holding right at this point. Kamua told Zatsu that Tae-sun was not here anymore. Zatsu seemed shocked. Showing the blood on his coat, he said that all that remained was Tae-sun's blood and his obsession. Zatsu-san. Zatsu was devastated hearing this. Kamua told him to accept his judgment, and then he was taken away with a rope. A silence continued after that, and Kamua petted Raid's head. He told him that it was over now, and Raid felt his family's souls being happy for the first time. Kamua said that he was going to get back to work now, and Asuta stopped him. He said that while he was away from the city, he made a new recipe and he told him to come by and try it out together. After a while, Kamua came to his stall, but he was alone. He said that Raid fell asleep as he was tired. Asuta said that he thought he must have been relieved because he looked worried the whole time he was away. Kamua understood and explained that he was worried about his work. Asuta responded that more than his work, he looked worried waiting for his return. Kamua seemed happy to hear that. He then wanted 2 portions of his new recipe for him and Reito. He was going to eat with him as soon as he got back. Asuta happily started preparing his food. For other people, it was difficult to understand what was inside someone's heart. But if neither of them wanted to change their relationship, it would be fine like that. In the next chapter, Asuta cooks his new recipe with full focus. Aifa noticed that he had been whispering while looking at his pot for a while now. Asuta asked if she was curious. She said that if he was worried about the cuisine, she could do a taste test for him if he wanted. He said that it was about the cuisine, but he didn't need a taste tester, which disappointed her. When he went to the stall, Vina wondered if Asuta was bringing boiled cubes to the Big Tree Pavilion. Thanks to Mise's kindness, the boiled cubes were served as a part of the menu at the eatery on the first floor of the Big Tree Pavilion. But there was a problem. He needed at least 2 or 3 hours to make the boiled cubes. Even if he could provide him with the meal, it was taking him too much time, and he was worried about only offering 1 dish. He thought about what to do, but then decided to start the fire now. While he was preparing, he heard someone come asking for a new dish. He recognized the voice, and it was Shumararu. He welcomed them and told them to wait while he was preparing. He then asked if he knew any eateries selling cuisine items in Geno City. He said he knew it, so Asuta asked if he would tell him about making special dishes or places that use rare ingredients. Shumararu went and they started whispering once again. He said that he would tell him after eating the new dish. After they ate, Shumararu took him and they started walking. It was Asuta's first time strolling through the city. They arrived at a building, and Asuta was glad that he showed him the way because all the buildings looked the same. It was an eatery, so there should be some interesting ingredients on their menu, as Asuta thought. A man came and he thought they were merchants. Asuta said that they were customers. He told them to take a seat if they came to eat, but Asuta said that he came to buy, not eat. He asked about the rare ingredients used in the eatery. The man stated that he didn't know what was rare for him. Asuta showed him the food he made with tau sauce, which was rare for him. Hearing this, the man went inside and brought Tino with Cheeto and Mayamu. This was pickled Cheeto soaked in maru salt, baby leaves, and the juice of the ramamu fruit, and he had some hardened gyama milk. Asuta was shocked to see processed food. They looked like kimchi and cheese. The man said that the gyama meat had quite a strong flavor, and that was the reason why they ate it with the Cheeto fruit. In short, the Cheeto was like the pico leaves, which means the Cheeto had a stimulating taste like something sour or spicy, like kimchi. He asked if he could give him both of those for this budget. They bought them and left the eatery. He thanked Shumararu and he said that he was looking forward to his new dish. Asuta went to the eatery while thinking about what Shumararu said to him. Maud said that the sales of the boiled Giba cubes were great and he would like to continue buying those from him. Asuta's day got much better after hearing that, and when he left the eatery, he was excited to try out the new recipe with the new ingredients. The next chapter begins with the ritual evening when Asuta and his team closed their shop and went home. Asuta entered the house and saw Aifa looking a little down. He asked if she wasn't feeling well. He mentioned that he got some new ingredients and tonight's meal would be a test again. When he asked if she was okay with that, Aifa didn't seem to care about it. He didn't know what happened, but was sure she was feeling down. He had an idea and grabbed some ingredients. He asked her if he made hamburgers and if she would eat them. Aifa seemed quite excited at first and then she hesitated. However, she eventually asked if she could taste the new ingredients he bought. Asuta told her that she could, and started with the thing that looked like cheese. He slashed it, put it on the pan and started heating it a little. After a few seconds, it started to stretch, which made Aifa leave in shock. Asuta tested how long it could stretch while Aifa was watching him in disbelief. He tasted it and he was right, it was cheese. Its thickness was the same as camembert. Aifa got angry and told him that she wanted to try it. Asuta started cooking right away. When the meat juices came out, he added the tau sauce. After adding the sauce, Aifa was enchanted to smell it. The best ingredient to go with that was surely poiton, as she said. But she was completely shocked when she saw him adding the cheese to the pan. Asuta didn't need to explain anything and he placed it on a wooden plate and it was done. He served his new recipe, cheese teriyaki hamburger. He handed it to Aifa, who was waiting excitedly. But Aifa didn't start eating right away. She remembered that she burnt herself with the juices spouting from the hot hamburger before. She wanted to eat it while it's freshly cooked, but she thought she should wait. However, Asuta suggested she eat while it was still hot, so she didn't have any other choice. She took a bite even though it was so hot. Because of her reaction, Asuta thought there was something wrong with the hamburger. Aifa didn't say a word before finishing it all and Asuta waited patiently. Finally, she finished it and stated that it was so delicious and was better than any meal she had eaten up to now. Asuta was happy and decided to prepare some poiton for her as well, but she stopped him. Asuta wondered what she was going to say and she said that it had been 2 months since they met, and she wanted to celebrate it by having a cheese hamburger. They started cooking cooperatively and finished the dinner in a short time. When they started eating, Asuta decided to leave all of them to Aifa as she seemed to love it. Asuta had 3 more dishes on his menu and the saltés of the boiled cubes were good too. But they were totally lacking in hands. When the day was over, they were tired, and Asuta asked them if they minded going shopping on their way back. Rudo reminded him to get more people to help out, but Asuta still had no idea who could fit. But Vina-Ru did know. She brought him to the Ru clan's village and told him to wait. Vina-Ru went to Reina's home and Reina seemed pretty annoyed and stated that it was not fair. She asked if she ate in the city. Vina-Ru seemed like she was trying to trigger her sister. Asuta was getting worried when she saw her provoking her way too much. Reina said that she wanted to help with the stall too, and Vina-Ru smiled because of her victory. She asked if he heard that from Asuta. Reina was shocked and confused to see Asuta hiding there. Vina explained to Reina that Asuta's stall was doing great and he was considering hiring someone else to help. And since she wanted to participate, she stated that they were counting on her. Reina did want to help them, but she also didn't want to skip out on her housemaid duties, so she was concerned. Asuta bowed down to her and begged her to help him. As Reina wasn't from Japan, she didn't understand what he was doing. He explained that it was a ritual from his country and they do it when asking for something. Vina-Ru commented that this would show his resolve. Reina thought about it for a moment and decided to ask if she could get permission to go with him. Asuta thanked her with a relieved face. With that, they carried the stuff to Asuta and Aifa's home. The next day, Kamua came and Reina welcomed him. Rudo didn't seem so pleasant by still having to carry the load when Reina, his big sister, was here. Reina told him that she only came to help with the stall. The tension between them was visible from even a mile away, so Asuta asked them to calm down and offered more products to Rudo to test. Kamua overheard them and offered a totosu if he was struggling with his cargo. Asuta was curious to know what had gotten into Kamua, but he continued to explain that he needed a totosu for carrying cargo. Asuta asked what was a totosu. Kamua reminded him that they were harnessed to the carriage last time. Asuta only remembered them as delicious-looking birds. Kamua was weirded out by his statement but said that one of their totosu escaped to the forest. He wanted to get it back but couldn't find it, and even if someone found it, he couldn't prove it was his. Asuta listened to him with a straight face and then asked him to state his order because there was a line forming. Kamua asked for 3 Giba burgers and 2 Giba sukiyaki. When Asuta served him, he was still insisting on the wild totosu. When he left there, Reina wondered if he was asking them to get the totosu, but they had no idea. Asuta decided to focus on serving the clients rather than thinking about what Kamua was saying. They spent their days with cooperation, and when it was time to leave, Rudo was still unpleasant with carrying everything. Asuta felt bad for not being able to do anything about this, and started thinking about solutions while on their way back. He thought about what Totosu Kamua had been telling him. Suddenly, Rudo noticed something and dropped everything he was carrying. He told everyone to step back and get ready to fight against something. To their surprise, the thing that came to them was Rimi-Ru with a big Totosu. Rudo asked why she was riding a Totosu and she said that she caught it. Asuta asked where she found it and she said that it was close to the forest. The girls asked if it could be a wild Totosu and Vina checked the stamps, which didn't have any, and confirmed that it was a wild one. The next day, they told Kamua what happened. Asuta told him that they wanted him to check it if possible because it may be the one he lost. Kamua seemed happy and continued to eat his burger. They went to see the Totosu, and Kamua asked Raid what he was thinking because he had some knowledge about them. The Raid started examining the bird and stated that he had no injuries and seemed used to humans. Asuta asked if that would mean it was a fine one. Raid said that it had got good muscles, so it should be easy to sell. Kamua was surprised because it was about carrying cargo this time. Rudo checked the bird, and when Raid started rubbing it, the bird sat. It was a well-trained Totosu, as he said. Kamua asked Asuta if he knew how to ride a Totosu, and he responded that Rimuru was riding it yesterday, but Rudo corrected him that she was more hanging onto it than riding it. Raid offered to teach him if he was fine with it, and Asuta accepted. When Asuta sat on the bird, he was so nervous that Raid had to comfort him that he was there with him. His problem was that without a saddle, he couldn't stabilize his center of gravity, which was like trying to stay on a full bicycle. Raid asked if he was fine, but he was not. He said that he would get used to it little by little. Aifa came and asked what they were doing here. He explained that he was training to ride Totosu, the large, majestic bird. Aifa seemed interested and asked if she could try it too. Asuta didn't mind at all and inquired if she had ever ridden before, to which she replied that she hadn't. Aifa stared at the bird, not knowing what to do, so Raid decided to help her. However, before Raid could assist her, Totosu sat down patiently and waited for Aifa to sit on its back. Asuta noticed that Totosu was reacting differently to Aifa, almost as if it recognized something special in her. When Aifa confidently said, "Let's go," Totosu started running around energetically. Raid couldn't believe that it was her first time riding it because she seemed like a pro. Aifa handled Totosu with surprising ease and grace, guiding the bird through the forest. After an exhilarating tour through the trees and trails, Aifa returned, her face beaming with joy. She seemed thoroughly entertained and excited by the experience. Kamua, observing the scene, asked if they would keep Totosu since they seemed to like her so much. Asuta then turned to Aifa, asking if she was okay with that arrangement. Aifa, clearly already fond of the bird, started petting Totosu affectionately and revealed that she had already named him Jiruru. In the next scene, Asuta introduces Jiruru, their new companion, to Vina, Reina, and Rudo. Vinaru and Reina seemed to love Jiruru, but its job was to carry stuff. Rudo asked where the carrier was, and Asuta said that they might find one by the roadside. Rudo took him to the Ru family's place and gave him a carriage. He warned Asuta that they were just lending it to him and he couldn't even imagine how his father would react if he broke it or damaged it. He showed Asuta the free ones, and Asuta looked at them. If it was only for carrying cargo, the little one would be enough, but Asuta decided to go with the bigger one so that they could also use it. He waited for Rudo to drive because he was the only one that could. Rudo told Asuta to be sure to increase his taste testing amount. Asuta promised to do that, and then he started driving. They entered the city in a very short time. Rudo asked where they should go, and they headed to the vendor who sold stalls. Asuta requested to borrow one more stall and assured the vendor that he would pay in advance. After purchasing the stall, the girls eagerly asked what the next step was. They began pushing the new stall next to their old one, aligning it carefully. Rudo expressed his enthusiasm for more taste testing once this task was completed. After positioning the new stall to complement the old one, their store's new look was complete. Asuta seemed really happy with the improved setup. It was now time to start today's work. Vinaru took charge of managing the pan's heat, while Reina was assigned the responsibility of replenishing the poiton and tino. They began working together in a very efficient and comfortable manner, and the girls seemed quite happy with the addition of the second stall, as it provided the extra space they needed. Asuta felt a deep sense of satisfaction seeing their content. Then he informed them that although it was a bit sudden, he wanted to try out his new recipe. Reina was surprised because they were almost closing for the day. Vinaru asked if he should wait until the next day to try out the new recipe, but Asuta explained that he couldn't wait because their family chief had developed an addiction to cheeseburgers. Although they didn't fully understand the urgency, they all agreed to help, including Rudo. Encouraged by their support, Asuta revealed the new ingredient he was going to use, kimchi, which was pickled chido. With a sense of excitement in the air, they gathered around as Asuta began to demonstrate how he planned to incorporate the kimchi into his new recipe. He was thinking about finding a new recipe using this. Reina asked if he was planning to sell it like that on the stand. He explained that he was going to cook it, and if he were to sell it, he would have to make it into something that would be easy to eat and walk. Asuta noticed that Reina seemed a little bit off. He was going to ask Vina about this, but then noticed that Vinaru was making the same face as Reina. He asked what was going on, so Vinaru told him to try tasting it one more time. Asuta tasted it, and aside from the evident spiciness of the chido, it also had the fragrant taste of mayamu and the softness of tino. And the final trick was the sourness. That spiciness that remains in the mouth is similar to kimchi. He asked the girls if they wanted to try it out, but they didn't answer him, and Vina asked Reina if they had enough tino. They had the tino, but they lacked poitan. They didn't seem to be interested, so he decided to think about it alone. If pickled Cheeto was the same as kimchi, he needed to make pork kimchi, and he thought about calling it Giba pickled Cheeto. It should go well with the sweetness and the fat of the meat. Suddenly, the Shimu people came. Asuta said that they were about to close but then noticed that they were staring at the pickled Cheeto. He explained that it wasn't for sale but they continued to stare at it. Asuta asked if they were interested and they said yes. Shumiraru started counting some ingredients and a recipe to use a pickled Cheeto. Asuta was shocked and surprised that they really knew a lot about it. Reina and Vina were not interested in it, but he hoped it would be different with them. Asuta asked if they liked the pickled Cheeto and they all started saying that they did. Now that he thought about it, the silver jar was from the east, so Cheeto could also be from the east. Shumiraru cleared his throat and asked if he was going to make something with pickled Cheeto. He said that he was still in the thinking process. Shumiraru stated that there was somewhere selling pickled Cheeto, a delicious one. Asuta didn't know that pickled Cheeto was already a prepared dish. They asked each other at the same time if they wanted to go to the place that sells pickled Cheeto. The girls were watching them pretty closely. Asuta promised to visit that place later and they left there. After a while, Asuta and Shumiraru were walking together, and Asuta apologized for forcing him to come along. Shumiraru reassured him that it was okay since it was part of his job to watch over the city. He mentioned that he would be leaving soon because as part of a merchant group he had to move to several different places inevitably. Asuta said that he would feel a little lonely. After a few seconds of silence, Shumiraru said that they would come again to meet him. In that case, Asuta promised to do his best to find a new recipe. When their conversation ended, they were at the door of the place that sells pickled Cheeto. They entered the place, and Asuta said he had something to ask the man running it. The man saw them and recognized Shumiraru, asking if he had come for business alone this time. Shumiraru explained that Asuta wanted to sell a meal featuring Cheeto in the shop. The man said he couldn't agree just because Shumiraru asked him to, and inquired about Asuta's identity. Asuta apologized for not introducing himself earlier, and introduced himself as the chef at a food stall, mentioning that he had once bought pickled Cheeto from this very shop. The man then remembered the transaction and asked what this was about. Asuta explained that he believed his new meal, which used Cheeto, would sell far better here, in a place frequented by people who already enjoyed pickled Cheeto. The man agreed, but didn't understand why he should take the risk. Asuta proposed submitting the meals for the man's judgment to see if they could be sold at his inn. The man was fine with that, but still asked how Asuta planned to execute it. Asuta replied that if the man didn't mind lending him his kitchen, he could prepare the meal right away. After considering it for a while, the man accepted and led them to the kitchen. Asuta felt the need to apologize for being a bother, but the man reassured him, expressing confidence in his abilities and noting that Asuta had even come prepared. Asuta mentioned that there was a particular meal he really wanted to make using pickled Cheeto. The owner understood and told Asuta he could use anything he needed from the kitchen. Asuta thanked him and immediately began cooking. After a while, the new dish was ready to be served. Asuta handed the food to the owner to try, and Shumiraru, intrigued, asked to try it as well. Asuta prepared a portion for him too, and they tasted it simultaneously. Both of them ate the dish and remarked that the meat's fat and the pickled Cheeto complemented each other beautifully, with the spicy aftertaste being particularly pleasant. The owner mentioned he could eat it all day long. Asuta was thrilled that they both liked it, feeling a great sense of accomplishment. He said that it would surely become a popular dish if served at the inn. Hearing this, Asuta wanted to borrow one of his pots. It was a small one, but he said that the first one was supposed to be a taste test, and now he asked if they would like to prepare it together. Shumiraru stated that he could only eat it, but it was fine with Asuta. He started cooking while describing what he was doing. He started with making the soup stock. He was boiling the Cheeto, which was a waste for them. He then told them to add anything they wanted to eat, and if it was possible, they should add something that was not too strong in flavor, something like Arya. They prepared it and then sat on the table, ready to eat. The man didn't feel like this was a taste test. Asuta agreed, saying that eating out of the same pot with the others was always something special. They started eating, and the man said that this was definitely something he would like his customers to experience. It was a good chance to make them enjoy a lot of different combinations of food with pickled Cheeto. He stated that he would like to serve both his meals in his inn. Asuta was so satisfied with this visit. Since it was possible now, he wanted to enjoy a pot with Aifa too. Asuta went home, and upon entering he called out that he had something he wanted her to taste test today. However, she didn't seem to be home. Deciding to start cooking while he waited, he was confident that she would gladly taste test his new dish for him. Aifa eventually came in, but she seemed a little off. Asuta noticed her unusual expression and asked why she was making that face. Aifa asked what was rotting in there, to which Asuta responded that nothing was rotting. She told him not to lie to her, insisting that something in the kitchen had a strong odor. Asuta, slightly upset, explained that it was their ingredients for tonight's dinner. He reassured her that although the smell was strong, it was just the pickled Cheeto he planned to use in his new recipe. She didn't seem to believe him, so Asuta elaborated further. Upon hearing about the Chido pot, Aifa's expression turned even more peculiar. Asuta asked what was wrong and she said she would be frank. As their firekeeper, she knew he was a fine cook, but to her pickled Chido smelled like rotten food. Seeing Aifa's reaction, Asuta now understood why Vina and Reina had reacted similarly. He explained that it wasn't the smell of rot but the smell of fermentation. Although it gave the same sour feeling, it was fundamentally different. Aifa asked how it was different, and Asuta replied that humans often decide what is good or bad for them based on their own convenience, justifying how good or nutritious something can be. However, he didn't care about that at all. What he wanted to convey was that the cheese he was putting on the Giba burger was also a fermentation product. She asked if it was something amazing with a firm face, and Asuta confirmed her. However, even after finishing the food, Aifa was still unsure. She asked if he was sure it was something edible, and Asuta told her to trust him. Aifa got her first bite and she seemed bothered by how the spicy taste felt in her mouth. She asked what he made her eat. Asuta apologized and said that he just wanted to make her try it and didn't think about her preferences. Aifa's eyes teared up because of how spicy the food was, but she continued to eat it even though it hurt. Asuta said that she didn't have to force herself to eat, but she said that she wanted to eat it even though each bite hurts and makes her cry. It made her want to eat more. After finishing the whole plate, Asuta asked if she wanted a refill and she did. She continued to eat it while in pain. Asuta decided to change the taste a little. He said that he would add cheese to it. He added the cheese and made her taste it again. It was hot, but it seemed like the taste was better now. Asuta also tried it, and even though it was hot and they couldn't speak because of the burn, they continued to eat it. The next day, Asuta went to the stall and told Vina and Reina what happened at the inn. They seemed relieved that Chido was not being sold here. But Vina said that she was going to miss the people from the silver jar as they often came all together. Speak of the devil, they were here at the stall, gathered their bags, and ready to leave the city. Shumararu said that they were leaving and that's why they came to bid farewell. He opened his hoodie for the first time and promised to be back to visit him. With that, they left, and Asuta knew he should come up with the new recipes for their next encounter. In the next chapter, we see a scene from when Vina first wanted to work with Asuta. They were worried that they wouldn't have enough firekeepers, but Vina told them to not worry as they still had Reina with them. They were relying on her, and Reina was happy to be able to help them. While working at the stall, Reina was watching Vina cooking with full confidence and she started comparing herself to Vina. When Vina asked Reina for the boiled giba, Vina-ru noticed that something was wrong with her and she asked. She said it was nothing, but it didn't seem like nothing based on her facial expression. Vina insisted on her and she eventually asked if she could let her work the pot too. However, before Vina answered her question, Asuta asked Vina to prepare the meat for the cooked mayamu. He also asked Reina-ru to get out of the poitan, but then noticed that she was acting differently. At the end of the day, they went to Asuta's house and then said goodbye. While walking home, Rudo commented that it was pretty frightening when big sister Reina remained silent like that. Vina said that she was like this from time to time like anyone. When they arrived at their house, they noticed that the fire was still on in the kitchen. Rudo left that to them and Vina and Reina went to give it a look and the women wanted their help a little. Some of them wanted to hear what they cooked with Asuta from Vina-ru, and they wished to cook under Asuta's guidance too. Reina felt discriminated against and she felt like no one in here and at the stall needed her. Remy-ru came and told her that she was making a funny face. This was the last drop for Reina and she suddenly slapped herself in the face. Remy-ru got so scared but Reina thanked her. She said that she thought she could become like Vina-ru if she went to the stall too, like getting acknowledged by everyone just like her. Remy said that Reina was not Vina. Reina said that even if she got praised here after she left, even if she left herself to help at the stall in the city, she couldn't clear this feeling. The truth was that she didn't want to become like her, she wanted her to acknowledge her. Remy-ru was sure Reina had gone nuts. Reina laughed and said that she was glad Remy was always the same. She had an idea and wanted Remy-ru's help. She wanted to use some of the ingredients in the food storage. She said that she wanted to learn more about cooking too. The woman next to her didn't seem to understand what she was saying because the dinner was already way better by following Asuta's teachings, which was more than enough. Reina wanted to try stuff out too, but she told her to stop right there. She said that she couldn't match Asuta because from his way of cooking to everything else, he just had his own way. Hearing this, Reina made the same face again. The woman asked if she wanted to be able to cook by herself too. She told her to be careful to not waste ingredients and gave her the key. They went to the food storage and Reina started picking some ingredients. Remy-ru asked if she was not going to make the boom and whoosh and she said that it was something like that. She didn't want to use new ingredients or do anything fancy, she just wanted to stick to the usual and do it her own way. The food storage door opened and it was Rudo. She asked what he was doing here this late, but he was the one who should ask this. However, seeing Reina's glare, Rudo gave up and decided to tell her. He said that he often woke up hungry, and when he was hunting he got some rations of dried meat, but right now, he doesn't get anything. Furthermore, he had to deal with all the heavy work. When Reina asked for more, he said that Asuta was always telling him he would let him have test samples in addition to the food he gave him, but he had never gotten any. Apparently, he was tired of this situation. In short, Reina understood that he just wanted to get revenge on Asuta. Ruto did not say that, but she ignored him and told him that he could join her as her ally, and they would get acknowledged by Big Sis Vina and Asuta. Ruto did not understand her at all, and asked Remy if she did, but she did not seem to understand her either. Reina didn't care about what they had been saying about her, and decided to start now. To sum up to this point, Ruto got involved even though he had a bad feeling about all of this. He said that if she were making a weird dish with meat in it, he wouldn't mind taste testing it. Reina told him to not be stupid and explained that she was going to make a giba soup. Ruto was surprised. He then asked if she wanted him to taste test it, and she confirmed. He said that there was nothing to taste about giba soup because they eat soup every day. Reina stated that this was such a stupid thing to say. She explained that it was precisely because it was their everyday meal. More than something delicious they could only eat from time to time, she wanted to make what they eat all the time tastier. This would mean Ruto would get his taste test every single day, so this made him happy. Reina didn't deny it and told Rimuru that she was counting on her. The next day at the stall, Vina wondered what had gotten into Reina, but she didn't say anything. She seemed like she was enjoying herself, but Reina refused, and she accidentally spilled the Tao sauce on the potion. Before throwing out the other poitan, she tasted it. Vina-Ru once again wondered why she was so happy, but she didn't answer her. When the stall was closed for the day, Reina went home and started her meeting. She told Ruto that she noticed something on the stall today, which was the Tao sauce. Ruto knew that was the sauce Asuta started using recently at the stall. Reina realized that Tao sauce goes well with poitan. Ruto said that they were selling giba meat simmered in Tao sauce on top of a poitan, so this was not new information. Reina once again laughed at Ruto, saying that he didn't understand anything. She said that there should be a way to make the soup better by just adding the Tao sauce to it, and if the soup gets better, so will the poitan, which means soup would be tastier. Rimuru suggested pouring some Tao sauce and they would be done, but what was important was the process. She thought about it while looking at Vina's cooking, and even with the same ingredients, if the process changes, the taste would change too. She wanted to start with preparing the giba meat. She cut it into different shapes and prepared the stoves with different power. It was Rimi's time to shine now. They started cooking together, and after a while, it was the tasting time. Ruto came and saw 4 bowls of soup on the table. Reina told them to not forget to compare them. Now it was time to see how great they were. The next day, Vina-Ru noticed that Reina had been tired for the past few days. Ruto was about to confess that they were trying to make a new soup at night, but then stopped himself. However, Reina told Vina that she wanted her to taste test something before dinner today. Vina was surprised and wondered why she didn't ask Asuta instead of her. Reina thought about that too and asked if they both could come. Asuta smiled and decided to close early today. At the Ru family's kitchen, Reina served the soup to Vina and Asuta and wanted them to tell her their honest feelings. They were surprised to see the giba soup they always made, but didn't say anything. They started eating, and Asuta immediately noticed the color and flavor. She added Tao sauce, but she didn't stop at that. There was more fragrance to it. He asked if she used cooked meat. Reina was more focused on what Vina-Ru was going to say, and Vina smiled at her, saying that she was amazing and it was delicious. She was proud of her little sister. Reina finally felt relieved and started explaining that she just did it like her. She always seasoned the simmered meat only once she got it out, and she put rock salt on it, then dipped it in the water, and only after did she put it on a low flame. Vina suggested she tell everyone about this because it would make dinner better. Asuta also praised her. He hoped to continue working together, but he did notice that she had a little bit of attitude. In the next chapter, Gazuran Team is in Asuta and Aifa's house, and he has a request for Asuta. He asked him if he could be the chef at the harvest feast they were going to hold soon. Asuta asked what kind of banquet it would be, and he explained that it was something like a banquet where muscles meet each other. Even though his face says that he understood nothing, Asuta accepted to do it. When Gazuram left, Asuta stated how he couldn't imagine what that was about, but he was curious if Aifa would dance again. He noticed that Aifa was dozed off. He called her name and said that he was asking her about the harvest feast. After a second of silence, Aifa explained that there would be a contest of strength between hunters at the banquet. As soon as you take your opponent to the ground, you win, said Aifa. Asuta wondered why he didn't explain it that way. Aifa said that it had nothing to do with her. Asuta commented that she seemed depressed, but she didn't reply. He told her that he was going to make her a new dish with meat, however. She said that it wouldn't be a hamburger, leaving him in shock. She said that since Dondaru was there and when Danrutim was present, there was only meat. She started repeating the word meat, which made Asuta worried that she was seriously ill. Aifa told him to leave her alone and he couldn't say anything further. The next day, Asuta prepared everything he needed to take with him, and Aifa decided to help him. Asuta told her that she didn't have to force herself, but she wanted to help him either. She said that she had nothing else to do. Men were at the strength contest, women were at the stove, and she had nothing to do as a woman hunter. Asuta found this pretty sad, but she didn't want him to petty her. They headed the road, and when they arrived, they saw men gathered. A man saw Aifa and commented on what she was wearing, asking her if she was trying to say women can be hunters as well by wearing hunter's clothes. Aifa asked if that would mean he wouldn't mind her showing she was a hunter right there. The man asked if she wanted to take part in the strength contest, and judged her, saying that she would only disgrace herself and lose right away. Aifa took off her coat and said that she was going to win. Asuta was shocked by her sudden change of mood, but still didn't stop her. He was happy that she was back to herself, and he had his battlefield waiting for him in the kitchen. He went to the kitchen and took a look at the ingredients. Aifa might be the winner, so he wanted to make roast giba. Now that he had decided, he started by mincing miamu and drying it, then smashed pico leaves and added salt, which was the seasoning. While he was cooking peacefully, he could hear the voices outside, people saying that Aifa won in the blink of an eye. He was actually dying to see what was happening outside, but he had to stay focused on his work. While cooking the ingredients on low heat, he heard once again that won her 5th round. It sounded like she was going to win and continued cooking. The residual heat should be more than enough to finish the cooking. By adding fruit alcohol and tau sauce and heating it until it thickens, he had finished the sauce and he just needed to plate it properly. He was wondering if Aifa was going to win, but then heard a man's voice saying that Aifa was defeated by Danruteam. Aifa went to Asuta's kitchen and informed him hesitantly that even though she did her best, she lost. Asuta asked why she came to tell him, and she said that she had shown him a pathetic part of herself. Asuta was surprised because he didn't know she would think like that. He asked if she really cared about that. He taught her how to high-five and said that now it was time for the firekeeper of the A family to do his best. Even though Aifa seemed impressed, she told him that he was acting way too cool for a firekeeper. Outside, Dondaroo was announced as the winner as expected. Danruteam came and told Asuta that he got 2nd place, which means Aifa was the 3rd winner. To answer Danruteam's curious looks, Asuta started explaining the menu for today. Dondaroo asked if that was really meat. He said that it was. They tasted it, and Dondaroo found it amazing, saying that he never stopped amazing him. Asuta thanked him, and Donda gave him his necklace. In the next scene, Asuta dreams about a memory of him asking about sugar water to his grandmother. She explained to him that the plum liqueur becomes sweet because of that sugar water. That was the reason why his grandmother's plum liqueur was delicious. When he woke up, he wondered why the liquor in this world was sweet. He asked about this when they were working with Vina-Roo. However, he didn't get the answer that he needed from Vina. He asked if it could be that their fruit breeding was so advanced that they only get fruits with a lot of sugar. But Vina-Roo didn't seem to understand what he meant, so he said it would be great if they knew someone who was an expert in liqueurs. He wondered if someone from the Silver Jar knew about it. It was possible, but they already left the city, so they wondered if they knew anyone who could be an expert in that. Asuta had one guy in his mind, which was Kamua. Vina-Roo asked what was wrong, and he said that he just needed to stop by somewhere. He went to Kamua's place, and while knocking on the door, he said that there was something he wanted to ask of him and he had brought some presents with him. Asuta first noticed Raid's emotionless face and then something on the desk, which was Kamua. Asuta wondered what had gotten into him, and he said that they were trying to kill him with work. Raid said that Kamua was almost at his limit and then asked if he could have the things that he brought. Asuta handed the presents to him while Kamua was still crying about his work. To cheer him up, Raid showed the presents that Asuta brought. Now he was crying of happiness. Raid said that he would bring something to drink with them as well, and teased him if the water that he used to clean the Totosu would be okay for him. Kamua called him cruel and wanted liquor to drink. Raid left the room and Asuta commented how he looked tired. Kamua said that he was more tired than he was. Raid served him the food and the liqueur, and Kamua started eating like he hadn't been eating for a year. He finished everything in a second and drank the whole liqueur bottle. Asuta asked if that was okay, and Raid said that it was. He asked what Asuta wanted to talk about, and Asuta asked why the liquor was sweet, and if it would be that the fruits that they were using were super sweet or something else. Kamua simply responded that they were using sugar. Asuta was stunned. Kamua said that it was sweet because they were putting sugar in it, and that sweetness was perfect to blow off fatigue. Asuta asked where the sugar came from, and they were buying it from the merchants. He added that since it was only used for liqueurs, there was no more than one shop selling it. Asuta got the answer he needed. Kamua looked happy with his sweet liqueur now. Asuta said that he wouldn't be able to work like that. But Raid was okay because for him, Kamua was useless no matter what. It was great that he got a break. Asuta went home. He learned something important today. He wanted to use liqueur to cook something, but even though he uses it quite often, he can't think of anything. When he was stuck like that, he should just cook something he wanted to eat. He thought about what to eat for a while and decided that he wanted to eat nikujaga, which was a traditional meat and potato stew. When Aifa came back, he told her that he wanted to make nikujaga, but she didn't know what it was. He said that the most important things were liquor and sauce. Nikujaga is a meal that contains thinly sliced onions, soy sauce, a little sugar, and konjac and pork meat or beef meat. Aifa asked if that was tastier than a Giba teriyaki cheeseburger. Asuta didn't expect her to say that. Aifa asked if there was tau sauce in the Giba teriyaki cheeseburger. At work, Asuta still wanted to make nikujaga. Vina asked what had gotten into her, and he said that he wanted to buy new ingredients before going home. The day ended, and they went to buy some ingredients. He wondered which ingredients would be closer to potatoes. He noticed something that he had never used and decided to see if he could try cooking it. Someone was behind Asuta, and it was Rudo-Ru, waiting excitedly. He asked if he was going to use chachi. Asuta confirmed him and brought 20 chachi. Rudo decided to carry it. They went home and Rudo followed Asuta. Asuta was puzzled, so he said that he would taste testing. He thanked him. Rudo told Asuta to not worry and get cook. Asuta wondered if he liked the chachi, and he said that they were so soft and sweet when baked, and if he added some salt to it, it would be even better. Hearing Rudo-Ru's words, Asuta was almost sure that chachi would be perfect for nikuchachi. Rudo didn't know what that was, but was sure it was delicious. After a while, Aifa arrived home from hunting. She noticed that Asuta had already prepared the dinner, and she remembered that he was acting weird yesterday. She entered the house only to see Asuta cooking while Rudo-Ru was walking around in the house with a chachi in his hands. She asked what they were doing. Asuta said that he was trying to make the nikujaga he told her about yesterday with chachi and Rudo would taste test it. Aifa didn't say anything and he continued cooking. The meat was ready and it was time for Arya. After that, he added the peeled chachi to it. Meanwhile, Aifa was taking off her coat. Rudo-Ru wondered if they should add more chachi. Asuta was confused and stated that it would not be better. Rudo was shocked. Asuta's whole mood seemed to change and he agreed with Rudo that nikujaga with more potatoes was better. Rudo said that there was no reason to doubt. The more chachi, the better. Asuta eventually listened to him and decided to add more chachi. With a perfect balance between the sweetness of the liqueur and the tau sauce and simmer chachi, the nikuchi was done. He served it to Rudo-Ru and they started eating. Rudo-Ru commented that it was delicious and Asuta agreed. Asuta then asked Aifa if she wanted to try it, and she said yes. She looked at the plate and didn't see any meat in it. Asuta said that it was inside the chachi, which confused her, but she still ate it, and they ended their day with this meal. That is the end of the recap at Chapter 51. Please read the pinned comment about the next part.